This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.
The London Assembly is the voice of London, composed of 25 members elected at the same time as the Mayor in order to hold him to account and to scrutinise his policies. This is a Mayor's Question Time meeting of the Assembly, which means that all members are invited to attend and ask questions of the Mayor. Can I welcome members, officers and the public here in the gallery and watching on the webcast. In case of an emergency and any need to exit the building, guests seated in the public gallery should follow the security staff and Assembly members should follow the meeting clerk. Please may I remind you to silence your devices, and can I ask the Mayor and members to position their microphones so that they can be heard clearly, moving it closer to you by picking it up from the base if required. Members are reminded that any electronic devices should not be placed in front of microphones, which must be turned on to speak and turned off once finished. Members are also reminded to turn off any mobile hotspots for the duration of the meeting. Can I now ask the clerk, Rebecca Arnold, to confirm any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies today from Assembly members Lord Bailey, Cooper and Moema.
Since we met 2 weeks ago, the Mayor and the Met to question the Mayor and the Met Commissioner about what steps are being taken to keep Londoners safe, the London Assembly Housing Committee met with charities and experts to ask about the challenges facing women leaving prison and how these affect their lives. The Transport Committee asked guests about the issues Network Rail's Access for All programme has faced and put questions to TfL about its Dial-a-Ride service. The Economy, Culture and Skills Committee met to question experts on the main challenges and opportunities for London's high streets following recent economic instability. The Health Committee held the first meeting of its HIV in London investigation. The Budget and Performance Committee questioned senior GLA staff and the Mayor's draft budget for 2025-26, which was published on Monday, the 11th of November. Was that English? I think it was almost English. And the Police and Crime Committee met for a Q&A session with the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime, looking into the Met's child protection strategy. Finally, it was a real honour as Chair to lay a wreath on behalf of the Assembly during the Remembrance Day service, which took place at City Hall. Can I ask the Assembly to note the interests set out at item 2? And do Assembly members have any other disclosable pecuniary interests which relate to the items on the agenda for today's meeting, or any other relevant interests, including any declarations in relation to gifts and hospitality which are not reflected on the authority's register of gifts and hospitality? Quiet on that one.
I will make reference to a London Loo alliance, but it is declared on my register of interests.
Thank you. Anyone else? Can I ask the Assembly formally to receive the Mayor's report covering the period from the 27th of September to the 7th of November 2024? And the Mayor will now provide an oral update of up to 5 minutes in length on matters occurring since the publication of his report. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Before I start, I want to take a moment to put on record my condolences following the news this morning of the death of John Prescott. John was, of course, Deputy Prime Minister. He was also the Secretary of State responsible for the passing of the GLA Act. Without him and his wholehearted commitment to English devolution, the last 24 years in our city could have been very different. He was a lovely man, a proud trade unionist, a brilliant campaigner, and someone who committed his whole life to improving the lives of others. John was a true giant of the Labour movement, and my thoughts are with his wife Pauline, his family, and to all those who knew and loved him. Chair, at the height of the cost of living crisis and in the face of some opposition, for the first time ever in our city, I took the decision to fund universal primary free school meals. The policy means that every pupil in every London state primary on every school day can sit with their classmates and share a healthy, nutritious meal. In the first year of the scheme, more than 43 million meals were served, with up to 287,000 children benefiting. Now in its second year, an independent report published this week confirms that our universal free school meals programme is proving a universal success. And not just for children, but for families, staff and schools. The provision has helped parents and carers to save more than £1,000 per child since the programme's inception. The new study shows that 84% of families reported free school meals have improved household finances. And in many cases, children are now attending after-school clubs and trips when previously they were financially excluded. The research also highlights an improvement in the health and well-being of London's children. Pupils enjoy school more and can concentrate for longer. Children even tried new food, which, as many parents will attest, is nothing short of a miracle. Because no one is forced to suffer the pain of hunger, classrooms are calmer and more productive. And by reducing financial stress on parents and carers, their mental well-being has been similarly enhanced. Across the board, we see that those struggling the most are benefiting the most. Moreover, the policies are raising the stigma associated with food insecurity. Parents no longer feel ashamed for means-tested free school meals being applied for. Schools aren't chasing parents to pay up, and children no longer feel embarrassed by the contents of their lunchboxes. Delivering free school meals is about investing in our city's future by developing the talents of everyone, and it's working. In fact, the more we learn about universal free school meals, the more there is to love. So let me put on record my heartfelt thanks to the catering staff, teachers, support staff, boroughs and officers here at City Hall for your incredible efforts. This programme is a success because you made it so. And to parents and carers in London, let me reiterate my promise that free school meals will be a fixture on our schools' dining tables for as long as I'm the Mayor. Thank you, Chair. I look forward to answering questions later on during the course this morning. I've been asked to give one oral update on the Euston Development Corporation. The redevelopment of the stations at Euston stalled for years under the previous government. Now that the new government has confirmed that High Speed 2 will run to Euston, an affordable proposal for the redevelopment of Euston Station is needed. TfL will be working with the DfT, Camden Council, High Speed 2, Network Rail and the Euston Partnership to reach a solution for Euston that maximises the development of opportunity and provides the appropriate capacity and connections to make it a great place to live, work and move around. Camden and GLA officers are also working closely on this, including looking at options for a development corporation, but no model has yet been settled upon.
Any supplementary to what the Mayor said? Assembly Member Garrett.
Good morning. You mentioned the cost of living and young people, and one of the things that is adding to people's cost of living is the fact that they may be overpaying for their travel. TfL's cyber incident means people can't get into their Oyster accounts. This morning I see you've announced that applications for Zip, Oyster cards and so on will be reopening, but there's still no news on when people can find out about possible overpayments on their travel. When will the Oyster card website be back up?
The cards affected, the member knows about. What TfL have done is begun switching the systems back on. To manage demand and process applications as quickly as possible, there's a phased approach, starting with 18-plus photo cards, which open on the 31st October, 60-plus portal open on the 12th of November. As it will take some time, and TfL are keen to ensure neither systems nor colleagues are overwhelmed, there's a phased approach for those children 5 to 10, then 11 to 15, then expired Zip cards, and we're hoping TfL to have this all sorted by the 31st of December. It will take some time, because what TfL are concerned about is by opening a door, it allows the hackers back in. So they are consulting with the National Cybersecurity Centre to make sure the phased approach is a safe one.
Okay, 31st of December. Thanks.
On those, sorry, I've got it on the refunds, if it helps. So it's only 2 lines. So TfL are working on a process for refunds, but are not yet in a position to communicate this. They plan to follow this up with targeted communications once the process has been confirmed.
But there's no date for that?
No.
Okay. I mean, can I just reiterate the fact that it's causing a huge problem for people, which I'm sure you know, but I want to make sure that it's on record, just the pressure and the uncertainty that that's causing.
No, thanks for raising that.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. We now move on to the questions on the priority order paper. Each group is allocated an amount of time to ask their questions that is proportionate to their size. The first question is the Budget and London from Assembly Member Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for your question. The country has been left with a legacy of financial mismanagement from the previous government, a £22 billion black hole in public finances, and an economy which has been struggling to grow for far too long. As a consequence, the new Chancellor has had to make some tough choices in her first budget and will need to make more at the comprehensive spending review next year. Last month's budget was about fixing our economy and public services after more than a decade of mismanagement and decline, and beginning the process of national renewal. I'm under no illusion about the extent of the economic difficulties inherited by the new government. One budget cannot undo 14 years of damage. While the Chancellor has taken some tough decisions, it's vital that the foundations of the economy are fixed so that the process of national renewal can happen. What this budget shows is that we finally have a government that understands the problems and opportunities London faces and is working with us, not against us. Substantial additional capital funding for TfL is fantastic news and will help to support the crucial maintenance, renewal and growth of London's transport system. It's almost double what we received from the last government. This new funding could help unlock new trains and depots on the Piccadilly Line and Docklands Light Railway, upgrades to District and Metropolitan Line signalling, purchasing new tram and Bakerloo Line stock and improving the Westway. And after all the dither and delay from the previous government, confirming that High Speed 2 will run to Euston will mean the capital can finally realise the full economic benefits of the project. I'm delighted the Chancellor announced additional money in London for social housing, schools and the NHS, public services that are in desperate need of investment after 14 years of decline. In London, we'll benefit hugely from the £100 million we'll receive from the government's £500 million extra investment in affordable homes programme. And the rise in the national minimum wage will be a real boost for thousands of low-paid Londoners across the capital, as well as new funding for breakfast clubs in our schools. These improvements build on the work we're doing in London through the London Living Wage and free school meals. We don't have the details of how each government department will allocate their budget, but with this new government, I believe we can start to make real inroads into tackling the biggest issues facing our capital.
The question was about how much we received versus what you asked for, and I've asked you before about the things you're asking the government for, which seems to have changed. It used to be that you stood up for London. When we had a Conservative government, you seemed to waste no time challenging them on what we needed. Since Labour came to power, you seem to be more interested in reciting party lines than standing up for Londoners. So the £4.9 billion a year that you said previously many times that London needs for housing, is that a demand that you're still making of the government?
We're setting out our ask for government for the CSR, and we're making sure our demands of the government, as in the words of the member, are made public. That'll be in advance of the CSR rather than the emergency budget, which was had last month.
Right, so when I asked you about this previously, you said you would be telling me either before or just after the budget, and now we've just had the budget, you're telling me to wait for the CSR. OK, the £2.2 billion of emergency housing funding you used to ask for, are you still asking for that?
The CSRs, I'm told, in late spring, early summer. I look forward to making representations to the government. I'll make this public. OK,
so you're not still asking for the £2.2 billion. On transport, last year you said you needed, for TfL, £569 million. Do you still say that TfL needed £569 million?
The amount of money received last month was almost double the amount of money received last year, and the Commissioner is very pleased with the £405 million from the government. What we're after from the CSR is a multi-year capital settlement, and we'll be lobbying for that and making that public when I make my presentations public.
So you're asking for less and being willing to take less. The funding that you got in the budget, there's a suggestion that that came with a proviso that you might have your fare-setting power suspended and that you wouldn't be able to freeze fares, you would have to rise, so you'd have to increase TfL rail fares by 4.6%. Is that your understanding?
So I think the member may be referring to the previous government's conditions.
I'm referring to the letter that you received from the new Labour Transport Secretary around the time of the budget, which was made public and which said they expected that you would increase fares at 4.6%. Is that your understanding?
So the previous government wanted us to take away concessionary fares for children and those above the age of 60. I declined to do so. So Londoners know, as long as I'm mayor, fares will be as low as they possibly can. No conditions in relation to the new Secretary of State. What is quite clear, though, is the finances are tight because of the mismanagement of the previous 14 years, and the Transport Secretary, not unreasonably, is going to make sure that she gets value for money from all parts of the country, but she'll be negotiated on behalf of those who want good public transport with the Treasury, I'm sure.
Now you're just repeating Labour lines, as I said at the beginning. It's clear that you've cut all of your asks. I suppose we will see in the new year whether your fares power really has been suspended, but that certainly seems to be the way it was reported in the press and the way I interpret the letter.
Well, the fares went up by 42%. 42% under the previous guy. They're down by more than 21%, according to compared to national fare increases.
Yeah, and so you're changing the subject because you don't want to admit that you've slashed your demands of government. We'll have to wait and see, Chair. I think he's now just monologuing. I have no further questions.
Chair, am I allowed to respond to the monologue from the member, or is it just what sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander?
Well, was there a question?
Oh, who knows? I mean, I lost the will to live 7 minutes ago.
Assembly Member Harani, is it on this question or the fact that you're next anyway?
It's on this.
On this question, so.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, we've just seen the Conservatives talk down the budget significantly, and they want to talk it down, but we need to remember what they... We want to remember that they were in government when we faced the 14 years of anti-London politics harming our city. And despite the economic difficulties inherited by the new government, they've chosen to prioritise investment in our NHS, which the last government left on the brink of collapse. Almost £500 million of capital funding for TfL, an uplift in the Affordable Homes Programme, and more than £200 million in additional funding to support rough sleeping, which has skyrocketed under the previous government, and a large increase in the minimum wage, including for young people, £1.40 per hour for 18 to 20-year-olds, which is the largest increase on record, not to mention the stuff that's not in the budget, such as the banning of zombie knives, which you've called for. So do you think that the Conservative group should be looking at its own government's legacy as well before criticising this budget?
Well, the member seems to think there's something wrong with the Labour mayor parroting the brilliant policies of a Labour government. Of course I want to do so, because you've just given examples of the huge wins we've got in 4 months, more wins in 4 months than the previous 14 years. And Londoners are still paying the price of their government's mini budget. We've had low growth, high interest rates and massive cuts in public investment across the board. So no wonder they are embarrassed by the last 4 months, because not only are we cleaning up the mess from the previous lot, but we're sending out investment that will benefit Londoners not just today but tomorrow as well.
And just on the Affordable Homes Programme for 25-26, the government will add an extra £500 million, providing £233 million of additional spending in 25-26 on homelessness as well. What will be the impact of that investment?
Well, you'll be aware, because I know you do lots of casework in this regard, that over the last 14 years, homelessness has more than doubled across the country, and London's not being excluded from the massive increase in rough sleeping. There are many, by the way, who are homeless, who are hidden homeless, sofa surfing and so forth. So a number of things the government's done already in the first 4 months compared to the previous government not doing. The Deputy Prime Minister herself has taken charge of a cross-government task force looking into the difference working together can make. I'll give you an example of the difference it makes. Somebody released from a prison should be getting support so they don't end up on our streets. Somebody who's discharged from hospital should be receiving support so they don't end up on our streets or sofa surfing. Addition to that cross-government working, we managed to receive secure £100 million for 25-26 we hadn't planned for. We're really grateful the government gave us this additional money outside the CSR Affordable Homes programme. And you're right, the government's also invested in huge amounts to do with rough sleeping. I said a few weeks ago, I think you're going to see things get worse before they get better. because I'm afraid of the legacy of the previous government. And as temperatures now fall to 0 degrees or less, I'd remind all colleagues, we now have our emergency shelters open. If somebody sees somebody sleeping rough, go to the StreetLink website, let our team know where they are, and they'll go out and be supported.
Thank you, and thank you on the announcement on the rough sleeping as well, given the temperature drop, the massive temperature drop this week. And the new government has prioritised investment in health, transport, housing, and also tackling rough sleeping. And we endured years of austerity before this from the last government. Can we now see a wider difference, and what are you expecting in the comprehensive spending review as well to tackle these issues?
Well, you'll be aware, 14 years ago we talked about a bed crisis in the NHS just in winter. There's now a bed crisis all year round, and one of the things the government's seeking to do with the additional funding to the NHS in the budget, which has been rejected and voted against by the Conservatives, is 40,000 additional appointments every week. Big game changer in relation to the NHS. In relation to schools, massive investment across London in our schools, but also from April, some of our schools will be receiving free breakfast, nutritional breakfast for our schools, investing in young people. In transport, we've talked about the investment of almost double capital. The government's already announced the funding for around 1,000 new zero-emission buses. I'm sure the Conservatives will be welcoming that from this government in the first 4 months as well. So we're seeing the shoots of investment in London as a consequence of a change in government. That's just in 4 months. And if this government can fix the mess left by the previous government, try and fill that £22 billion black hole, even more investment, I think, coming forward in the medium to long term.
Just on the NHS, because you mentioned it, and large amounts of significant funding have been announced for the NHS, including £22.6 billion on year-to-year spend, as well as capital, and the ongoing repairs bill. There's a £1 billion extra money allocated for that from the NHS. How will you be working to government to make sure that London can get its fair share and what it needs?
I'm really pleased in your question. You set out the details of the funding the government's announced. You'll remember a previous Prime Minister and even a leader of a Conservative party promising 40 new hospitals. Where are they? Where are they? What this government has done is set out the money for the investment, and it's set out in the budget last month, and that will make a real difference to the health and care estate. I mentioned the new appointments, I mentioned the additional staff, but it's really important there's a better environment for both patients and staff, and some of this money will be going towards improving the estate, which is in a terrible state because of 14 years of Conservative government, and we mustn't let them forget the legacy of that 14 years.
Thank you. Not to mention the fact that appointments will be going ahead, given the ending of strikes and negotiating with trade unions on disputes. So during the Conservative years of austerity, NHS spending grew by an average 1.6% in real terms, but the recent budget sets the increase at 3.7%, which is closer to the historic average. What impact has the Conservative austerity left on London's emergency services and public services? I
think anybody who's got time should read the Darzi report. I mean, he sets out the consequences, not just of the changes made by Lansley in 2011, structural changes that have been counterproductive, but also 14 years of underinvestment in the NHS per capita. I think we have one of the least amounts of money funded in the health service any of the G7, G8 countries, and we can see the consequences of that. And with Wes Streeting in charge of this area, we'll have both reform, really important, but also investment, equally important as well. And since the late 40s, we know the Labour government doesn't just set up the NHS, we rescue it and save it after Tory governments let it down. This is no different.
Thank you. Thank you. And withdraw the question.
So the next question is withdrawn, so we move immediately on to Assembly Member Roberts, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Could you provide... Sorry? Oh, sorry. It was a long journey in, Chair. I do apologise.
No, don't worry. Don't worry. We've all done that. We've all done that.
Thanks, Chair. Tackling violence against women and girls and improving confidence to travel is a top priority for me. And TfL has a comprehensive programme in place to support my violence against women and girls strategy for London. This includes training staff on recognising and supporting customers who experience sexual harassment, in-depth research and women's safety audits, and targeted campaigns to encourage reporting and active bystanders. More than 2,000 police and police community support officers work alongside 500 TfL enforcement officers to keep Londoners safe on the network. TfL has over 77,000 CCTV cameras in place across London's transport network and is currently working with the Metropolitan Police Service to trial the use of specially designed CCTV cameras at a number of bus shelters. I remain committed to our Vision Zero aim to eliminate all deaths and serious injuries on London's transport system by 2041, and we're making good progress. By 2023, there was a 30% reduction in fatalities and 24% reduction in serious injuries on London's roads against the 2010/14 baseline, compared to 7% and 13% respectively for the rest of the UK. But one incident is one too many, and I know there's more to do. That's why TfL is taking comprehensive action to improve safety across the network. This includes programmes and initiatives such as the Bus Safety Standard, which sets world-leading requirements for new buses in the fleet. TfL recently strengthened the requirements for its direct vision standard for larger HGVs. On the rail network, activity includes trialling technology to improve customer safety, for example, when boarding and aligning trains or using escalators. TfL regularly meets with affected families and is making changes to improve the safety of the network, as well as the way it supports and communicates with those who suffer injuries or lose loved ones in incidents on its network. This includes the Sarah Hope line, which offers support and advice to anyone who's been involved in or affected by a life-changing incident. TfL also now has a pilot programme in partnership with the Met Police Service and MOPAC to extend the level of support available to victims of road collisions. I'm more determined than ever that all Londoners should feel safe when travelling in their city, and I'll keep working with TfL to make this a reality.
Thank you. Kathleen Finnegan was only 56 when she was knocked down and killed by a bus at Victoria Station in January. Terminus Place at Victoria Station had been closed the previous November for, and I quote, essential works to improve pedestrian safety and accessibility, but clearly, and tragically for Kathleen and her loved ones, it was not enough. Melissa Burr lost her life at Victoria Station in 2021, and another woman was seriously injured in a bus collision there in May of this year. So what more can be done to improve safety for pedestrians, specifically at Victoria Station?
Can I thank the member for raising the question and the way he raised it? Unfortunately, there's also another bus station which causes concern, Walthamstow, and that's why it's really important for us to look at the design and layout of these stations. Is there something systemic about the way the bus stations were designed? Are there other bus stations where there's not been a horrific tragedy or serious incident, but one is waiting to occur because of design? So can I reassure the member that TfL are looking at all bus stations? Victoria and Walthamstow are clearly at the fore of TfL's work for obvious reasons. And once the review's been undertaken, the remedial work will happen straight away. Walthamstow, by the way, is closed to the public for the remediation work to take place, and TfL will make sure any remedial work takes place as soon as possible, because it can't be right that people, going about their daily lives, get hurt or even worse, in the examples you've given, lose their lives.
Thank you. Kathleen Finnegan's family have repeatedly asked TfL for the risk assessment of Victoria Station, both at the time of her death and following those recent improvement works, but TfL have not been forthcoming. The risk assessment provided to Melissa Burr's family in 2021 indicated serious issues with road safety at the station. Given that transparency at this stage can only help drive up standards, will you commit to getting that risk assessment from TfL for Catherine's family?
Absolutely. Just to be clear, I think there should be a duty of candour. There should be no evasiveness or hiding this sort of stuff. And so, I'll follow that up.
Thank you. No further, Mr. Chair.
Assembly Member Bakari, please.
Thank you. Just to go on from Kathleen Finnegan's tragic situation with her family facing no support or contact from TfL in the aftermath of her death, and they had nothing until their local MP, Ed Davey, intervened, and TfL agreed to meet her family 4 months after her passing. In September this year, you rightly apologised to Kathleen's family for that lack of support. Since July, there's been 2 more fatalities linked to TfL. Do you know if TfL have offered the immediate support to those families?
I'm not with the details, but I'm more than happy to follow that up.
Okay, thank you. I recently met with Sarah Hope that you mentioned earlier, and her mother died and daughter suffered life-changing injuries as a result of a bus collision. Sarah Hope Line was set up in her name in 2016 to offer support to victims and their families. In 2024, this year, only 50 people have contacted the Sarah Hope Line, compared to 113 in 2019, so there's very little public awareness, and people really need Sarah Hope Line when they're at their most vulnerable. Will you therefore commit to better targeted promotion of the Sarah Hope Line?
Well, I'm surprised the members are not aware of the excellent work we've done, and the lobbying of Caroline Russell, actually, in relation to support those who... what happened in the past was victims of road collisions weren't told about the help available, and you'd have to almost navigate yourself to find the help given. I'll share with the member the work we're doing. Any other ideas she's got about how we can amplify the work, please let us know, because these are great services that we want people to use. And so I'll share them with the member, and just let us know if there's more things you think we can be doing, because we want these services available to those who need it.
When I was meeting Sarah, she also mentioned that she struggled to engage with the team responsible for running the service, and this team is made up of 8 customer experience executives. Will you direct the team to engage with Sarah to make it a priority to ensure that regular meetings are organised between Sarah and the Sarah Hope Line team to ensure that there's continued operation of the line, that it remains a top priority for TfL?
I'm more than happy to follow that up.
Okay, brilliant. And my last point on Sarah Hope Line is I do note the work of MOPAC's Road Victim Support Partnership pilot and the work of Break and the Road Peace on their collaboration, but the Sarah Hope Line still plays a really crucial role providing support for victims, such as short-term financial assistance. Will you commit here today to ensure that funding will always be made available to allow the Sarah Hope Line to effectively assist victims of road traffic collisions involving TfL services?
Just to remind colleagues why the Sarah Hope Line is different to the others. It's our own London bespoke support system. Break and Road Peace are brilliant national organisations, and so we're committed to support the Sarah Hope Line. Sarah herself deserves our thanks, notwithstanding being a tragic victim of a road tragedy. She perseveres and helps others, and her personal experience, I know, is really reassuring for others, but she's been through it, which helps others have confidence to take part in the system. So I'm more than happy to respond to the questions raised by the member as well. I'll get back to her.
Thank you. I know that Sarah's going to be watching this, and she's been so insistent on the need for the Sarah Hope Line, and she'll be pleased to hear of your support today. I just want to touch on one last final point, and I talked about this with you last time about bus drivers and conditions that they're going through. They marched to TfL headquarters recently. They wanted to highlight the fact that they should be without fear or retribution from TfL or employers about their right for safety concerns, and some have been calling the way TfL bus franchises are working as unsafe due to long shifts, few breaks and stressful conditions, as well as blistering heat conditions. As the bus contracts come under GLA ownership, will you commit to standardising the breaks, psychological support and training for bus drivers to ensure that they get the support that they need when they are behind the wheel?
I'm not sure if I follow the question.
So you're under the bus contracts, now the bus contracts are going to be under GLA ownership. Are you going to be able to commit to standardising break, psychological support and training for bus drivers?
I'm not the detail of the question that's been raised, but I'll go and look at it. I'm not sure the details.
Okay, well, I'll better phrase it in a written question to you later if that's possible for you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Assembly Member Polanski, and it concerns COP29.
Thanks for your question. We're at a pivotal moment for our planet. The recent flash floods in Valencia are a further stark reminder that the impacts of climate change are no longer a distant threat. They're here, right now, affecting lives and neighbourhoods. With COP29 underway, the urgency to act has never been clearer, and the recent US election has underscored the importance of steadfast international cooperation on our efforts to tackle the climate crisis. We need to double down on our partnerships both at home and through our global city networks. We need to show everyone that what's good for the planet is good for people. It's heartening to see both the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero demonstrating at Baku that the UK is ready to lead the way in its green economy revolution. But they haven't just been talking the talk at global conferences, they've been walking the walk from the day they were elected to government. Ed Miliband scrapped the previous government's ban on onshore wind in his first 24 hours in the job. And the new government is now working on a net zero electricity grid by 2030 and the creation of GB Energy. I'll be working closely with this climate-ambitious government to support a genuine retrofit revolution. I want to see a significant portion of the GB Energy Local Power Plan and public sector decarbonisation scheme funding come to London. I'm hopeful this government will tighten national energy efficiency standards and allow local planning authorities to set even more ambitious local standards where appropriate. A multi-year funding settlement for London in the Comprehensive Spending Review next year would help us achieve our goals, and I want to see an overhaul of the previous government's aviation decarbonisation strategy to meet our climate change commitments. We're going to have a strong net zero investment pipeline of projects across London, and the Office for Retrofit we're establishing will be ideally placed to take forward a local settlement from the GB Energy Local Power Plan and the public sector decarbonisation scheme, ensuring funds go to where they're most needed. This is a unique opportunity to demonstrate what can be achieved when national government joins cities as climate leaders.
Thank you. There is an urgency to act, and you're right, we absolutely do need to double down. It's, of course, not just Valencia. We've seen heat waves in Mali, we've seen droughts in Zambia. The climate crisis is happening all over the world, and it's disproportionately affecting the people who have done the least to cause it. Now, the 1.5 degree target looks increasingly in jeopardy. In fact, we're on target for 2.5 to 3 degrees. This is concerning. That's an understatement. Are you as concerned as I am that right now London is not on track to meet its own 2030 target?
As things stand now, we're not on target to meet them. I think all is not lost. And one of the reasons why I'm excited by the changing government is the speed at which they've got going. But I think your counsel is right in relation to the importance of getting on with this.
It's good to hear that you acknowledge this. Now, in terms of the government and the speed, there's two kind of big pathways in your pathway, or two big policies. One is retrofit, and one is around transport. Now, retrofit, I'm slightly concerned to say you're hopeful, because actually it seems to me a no-brainer that the money should be giving you this money. The government should be giving you this money. They're spending £22 billion on carbon capture and technology, and unproven technology. As Gareth Dennis put it in a recent book, it's like AM versus FM, actual machines versus effing magic. He doesn't quite say effing. We should be investing in the things that actually work, and that's retrofit, not in carbon capture. But your other passageway is around transport. Now, you've ruled out road user charging, but in a press release just a couple of years ago, you talked about the need for road user charging to be a critical part of your pathway. You said at the time that we're the doers and not the delayers. So how do you add up this vital part of your pathway that you've now ruled out, and how are you going to get the emissions to get back on track?
Well, I'm doing both the issues raised in the question. The first in relation to retrofit. So what we're lobbying the government for is a multi-year funding settlement for warm homes, social and warm homes local government based on population share, all levels of fuel poverty. And that would enable us to scale up retrofit of domestic and non-domestic buildings. And my understanding from what's in the public domain, so not bridging confidences, is that work begins in 2026 in relation to a single settlement for London. In relation to the sources of climate emissions, I mean, basically, it's 2/3 buildings, 1/3 transport. We've made huge progress in the last 8 years in relation to both air pollution, but also climate emissions through transport. We have the largest clean air zone in the world, which has led to a reduction in carbon emissions as well as improvements in air quality. Our focus is to get all our buses electric by 2030. The current target is 2034. At the moment, we've got the largest zero-emission bus fleet in Europe. More than half of our taxis are now zero emission. We want to increase those. So, I'll be lobbying the government for support to make that transition. We're also spend a lot of time, effort and money in relation to rewilding our city. You'll know the impact biologically of planting in relation to carbon emissions as well. As long as I'm mayor, there will be no pay per mile. Clearly, if somebody else becomes the mayor after the next election, he or she's fit to do what they want to do.
I mean, that's worrying because that would presumably be 2028 unless you're about to make some big announcement, which would leave only 24 months to get to the net zero target. I think the other problem is the last time we had this conversation last month, we were talking about aviation expansion. I asked you to collaborate with me to write a letter to the government. You mocked that idea, and just a few days later in the budget on page 63, clear in black and white, was aviation expansion of City Airport. We've also got Louise Haigh talking about expanding airports all over the place. Isn't it time for your carbon pathway to actually have legal standing?
I don't understand the question.
So at the moment, they can just shrug their shoulders and ignore your carbon pathway. It's just essentially a fictional document that says these are the things we'd like to do. Would you like to see that have statutory policy and planning law?
Oh, so if the question is, do I want more power? Yes.
Good. Thank you very much, Chair.
The next question comes from Assembly Member Hall, and it concerns police confidence.
Thanks for your question. London's police perform an extraordinary role to keep us all safe, and we should be grateful to them for that. Policing by its very nature is a demanding and challenging occupation. We expect a great deal from our officers, preventing crime, investigating complex cases, supporting victims and witnesses, and regularly placing themselves in danger to protect us. It's vital that the Met Police Service officers have the confidence to do the best job they can to keep Londoners safe. A series of terrible scandals has rocked the Met Police in recent years, affecting both public confidence in the police and, in turn, the confidence the police have to do their work. From Sarah Everard to Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman, from Operation Houghton to the Stephen Port murders, from Daniel Morgan to Child Q. The vast majority of officers have the right values to represent and protect London. To reform the Met Police Service culture and root out those officers with the wrong values, and to be open and transparent as we do this work. I welcome the Home Secretary's recent announcement on reforms to strengthen the police accountability system, and I know the Commissioner has also welcomed these proposals as a step towards a fairer and faster system to help put confidence back into policing. I'll continue to work with the Government and the Mets to ensure officers can confidently use their powers and that there's a fair and transparent system of police accountability that can be trusted by Londoners and the police. Another way I show my confidence in the police is by supporting them with the resources they need to keep Londoners safe, including providing funding to put 1,300 more officers on the streets, providing additional funding for the Met Police Service to grow the number of PCSOs by 500, and investment from City Hall as part of the new Met for London plan. City Hall funding of the police has doubled since I became mayor, further showing my support. I'm also committed to working with the government to help put an extra 1,300 neighbourhood police officers and PCSOs on our streets over the next 4 years. It's my responsibility as mayor to hold the Met Police Service to account, including through the London Policing Board, which recently examined issues around police confidence. This session included the importance of officers being given the right training, support and oversight to exercise their powers fairly and effectively. These areas that were also highlighted in Baroness Casey's review.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know you repeat often the things that they've done wrong, and quite rightfully in some instances. I really wish, though, that you'd tell the whole world of all the wonderful things that the police officers do. Now, the police are given limited opportunity to explain themselves. But we had an officer a few months back when we were talking about the Notting Hill Carnival, and he actually explained to the Police and Crime Committee why they did what they did. This is the importance of having police officers at the Police and Crime Committee. Now, you've just mentioned the London Policing Board. The London Policing Board has senior officers at it the whole time. It has 2 subcommittees, and 2 senior Met officers have been in each one of those. Now, if you look at, we're not asking for the Commissioner every time. We've seen the Deputy Commissioner once. There are 30 senior officers in the Met's executive structure. All we are asking from Police and Crime Committee, and this is absolutely cross-party, is that we actually get officers there. If they can come to your policing board, where you chose the members of it, then they should be able to come to ours. And if they haven't got time for both, they should come to the committee that is set up by the GLA. They should come to the Police and Crime Board. What do you think? Police and Crime Committee?
Well, the member as a chair is more than entitled to raise those points with the Commissioner, as I'm sure she will.
She's raising it with the Police and Crime Commissioner. You know, you are responsible for this. You could say to them, don't go to the London Policing Board if you don't have time. You must go to the Police and Crime Committee. It is cross-party. That is what we are paid to do. And every single one of us around this table agree with that. They should be there.
Well, I'm quite clear that in implementing the recommendations of Dame Louise Casey, the London Policing Board provides a service to me in holding the Met Police Service to account while supporting them as well. Clearly, if the London Assembly want to have police officers come into their committee, they should be writing to the Commissioner to make those recommendations.
That's already been done. I was rather hoping for something more positive from you. I don't know why, though. But let's go on to something else, because you're clearly not going to be of any assistance there. Sal Naseem was the IOPC officer that actually put a homicide case to the CPS within 3 or 4 days of the Chris Carber event, I'll put it that way. He did so. He said it was fed back to us that if it hadn't been done so quickly, then there would have been a level of disorder. Did you personally speak to Sal Naseem?
I meet the IPC on a number of occasions. My understanding from the IPC, though, the IPC has put out a statement last week, which is that it was the IPC who made the decision, not Mr. Naseem. And Mr. Naseem's views do not reflect the views of the IOPC. Mr. Naseem left the IOPC before the investigation was completed, and he did not make the decision to begin a criminal investigation or to refer to the Crown Prosecution Service.
Did you talk to him yourself?
I spoke to a number of representatives from the IOPC, including Mr. Naseem.
Regarding it going to a homicide thing to the CPS?
No, I think issues of IOPC, CPS, the police, operational matters should be decisions they take. And I think public pressure should not be allowed to affect IOPC, CPS or the Met Police Service. My experience of all three organisations is they don't.
So would you support an independent inquiry specifically into the decision to charge the firearms officer in the Chris Carber case?
No, because the process was one where due process appears to have been followed. The police watchdog, the IOPC, looked into this matter. They referred the matter to the Crown Prosecution Service. The judge in the trial decided to lift the anonymity of NX 121. A jury acquitted NX 121. There is still an IPC investigation. There is still an inquest. That's the joy of a democracy. The checks and balances and the due process. Justice should be open justice, and that's what's happened, and I'm really pleased that's happened, because it means the public has confidence and the police have confidence.
I think there are many that think there are issues around that, and they would like an actual inquiry on that specific case. After our plenary meeting with you and the Commissioner went to an event that evening, and you must have read or seen the comments he made. The Standard afterwards reported the Commissioner's remarks as Met Police boss Sir Mark Rowley rebukes Sadiq Khan over Chris Carver shooting case. Do you agree with that?
I've not seen the press reports, and I speak to the Commissioner on an almost daily basis, and I think the point he made at the plenary is a really important one. It's not for the Commissioner to hold me to account, it's for me to hold him to account.
Well, I just know that police firearms officers are handing in their tickets because they don't want to do it. They do not feel supported by their Police and Crime Commissioner. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Assembly Member Desai, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, you already talked about the various steps you've been taking to support our police force, including additional funding. It is a matter of record that funding from City Hall to the Met has more than doubled since 2016 when you became mayor. It is also a matter of record that the Met has suffered from a decade of £1 billion austerity cuts under the previous government. Has this long-term underfunding of our police force impacted officer confidence and undermined the Met's efforts to tackle crime in our city?
Well, it's noteworthy that the chair of the committee is talking over another member of the committee while he asks his very important question shows the lack of respect there is from the chair of the committee to her members. He raises two very important points in his question. I had the courtesy to listen to the question, unlike the chair of the committee. The 2 points he raises is evidence of support. Evidence of a lack of support is cutting £1.2 billion from the police budget over 14 years. Evidence of support is doubling the contribution made from City Hall to the police over 8 years as mayor. The second point he raises in relation to the impact these cuts have on police confidence. I'm surprised the chair of the Police and Crime Committee didn't mention the survey done of officers as recently as last year. The issues that were being raised were work environment, brackets because of cuts, close brackets. Occupation, health and support, brackets because of cuts, close brackets. The equipment and training, why is it got less good? Because of cuts. Work-life balance, because leave being cancelled and overtime and so forth. And so the officers are seeing the consequences of 14 years of austerity. I spoke to somebody last year who was telling me the police building they work in has a leaking roof where water comes into their premises because of the estate being neglected over 14 years. So I'm really pleased he raised these important issues. The police know, with me as the mayor, I'll continue to invest in them because it's really important. A better funded police service means a better service to the public. I'm not embarrassed there's nervous laughter from the Conservative part of the Assembly. They should be ashamed of the cuts made to our police over the last 14 years, ashamed. They used to be the party of law and order. Now they disrespect a court verdict and don't invest in the police. Hardly law and order, is it?
Thank you.
Next question is from Assembly Member Wilson, and it concerns TfL fares.
Thanks for your question. I'm committed to freezing fares until at least 2025 and continuing to freeze fares for as long as wider economic conditions allow. I'm proud that during my first term as mayor, I froze all pay-as-you-go fares on TfL services and only increased them when required to do so by the then government. Thanks to those 5 years of frozen fares, TfL fares set by us are now 14% lower than if they'd risen in line with national rail fares and 21% lower than if they'd risen in line with RPI since 2016. This has saved Londoners hundreds of pounds on average. To help make public transport more affordable for Londoners, I introduced Hopper Fare, allowing passengers to make unlimited free bus and tram transfers within an hour. I'm very proud that bus fares in London are the cheapest in the country. TfL also offers a wide range of travel concessions to millions of eligible Londoners, providing free and discounted travel for some of the most vulnerable in our society. I'm proud that I've kept these despite the previous government wanting to remove them. In October last year, we introduced a new travel concession providing half-price bus and tram travel for care leavers aged between 18 and 25 who live in London. And we did all that while returning TfL to financial sustainability following the devastating impact of the pandemic, and have delivered a TfL operating surplus for the first time in TfL's history. The cost of living crisis continues to have an adverse effect on Londoners and their finances, and I remain determined to keep London's public transport system as affordable as possible while continuing to deliver a world-leading public transport network. I'm pleased that in the budget last month, the government granted TfL £485 million allocated for capital investment in our transport network in 25-26. This is almost twice as much as the previous government provided the year before. This government's also recognised the benefits investing in TfL can have not only for London, but for the country as a whole. I'll continue to work closely with them to place TfL on a long-term financial sustainable footing. We're in the process of preparing my budget for 25-26, and as usual, TfL's fare structure will be announced later in the financial year as part of that process.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I didn't ask about what you've done in your previous terms. The question was very much focused on your manifesto commitment for this term. As you say, it was to continue to freeze fares for as long as economic conditions allow. Now, we've seen that the principal change in economic conditions over the previous month is, as we've seen from borrowing figures today, released this morning, second worst October borrowing figures on record. It seems that the new Chancellor, she's been very, very capable of creating a black hole of her own, and not just when it comes to the accuracy of her CV. The other change that we've had in recent months is that we now have a government that has not been giving you everything that you want, as we saw from the exchange with Assembly Member Garrett earlier. And what they have given you, and it seems to me there's a very clear mandate that you must increase your fares by 4.6%. Is that true? And if that isn't true, and you're looking to do something different, at what stage will you tell us what you're going to be doing?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So one of the reasons why the government's paying back more in relation to monies borrowed is because of the borrowing done by the previous lot. It's worth, you've got to go backwards in relation to...
Public sector pay rise, it clearly, even the BBC are admitting that. It's the splurge that we've had since the new government's come to power. That's the cause of this overspending, over-borrowing, and that's where we're at.
Well, I'm surprised that the reason for borrowing that the member gives is not because of the debt over the last 14 years, is because junior doctors are no longer striking, is because teachers aren't striking, is because transport workers aren't striking. It's because they're not striking, there's more productivity, which people can get to work, can get hospital appointments, can get to university, and so forth. Now, look, I don't apologise for the fact that we secured almost double from this government what we got last year. The number of wins we've had from this government over the last 4 months are more than the previous 14 years put together. But the legacy of this government is one where, on an annual basis, there's a black hole of £22 billion which has got to be filled. And that's what this government intends to do with the budget last month. And I'm looking forward to a CSR next spring, summer, that will help us to have, hopefully, multi-year deals. So we've not got the stop that we've had in the past. And the reason why it's important to talk about my record is Londoners know that since I've been mayor, we've managed to keep fares down. They increased by more than 42% under the previous mayor. They're about 21% lower compared to what would have happened nationally had I not been the mayor.
If we want to talk about your previous record, then we can talk about the cost of London government crisis. The fact that your share of the council tax has risen by 71% since you've been elected. We had a cost of living crisis exacerbated by lockdown, which every other party here supported wholeheartedly. We have a cost of government crisis, say, highest tax burden since the war, which they delivered, and now your lot are increasing even more. Your own cost of London government crisis, we've got the highest energy prices in the world, winter fuel and scrap, all these pressures on hard-working Londoners, and on top of that, now it seems you're not in a position to rule out an above-inflation fare rise. That's where we're at. That's why I'm unhappy. That's why a lot of Londoners are unhappy. And we want to know, we want the certainty, when are we going to find out whether or not these fares are going up?
I mean, with respect, the member's always unhappy. Not just today. And so it's really important. It's really important that I remind you and Londoners that since I've been mayor, we've kept public transport fares down. Unlike the rest of the country, we have a hopper fare in London, which means unlimited bus travel and tram travel for the one price in an hour. We've got the cheapest bus fares in the country. We've managed to make our TfL budget go into surplus for the first time in history. TfL was set up in 2000. Never before has the budget been in surplus. We pulled it off this year, notwithstanding the pandemic. The reason for the energy prices going up is because of the reliance on fossil fuels from across the globe. Putin invades Ukraine. I'm unclear whether the member supports that or not, by the way. Putin invades Ukraine, and so it leads to a massive spike in energy prices, in which case I hope the member supports Ed Miliband in energy security, and so we can have more onshore, more offshore, more solar.
I'd love to have self-sufficient. I'd love to make better use of our own natural resources, the treasure under our feet. That would give us the same energy prices we have in America, where they make use of those resources far better than we do.
You're out of time. I do apologise, you're out of time. I'll let you have another 30 seconds almost. So, Assembly Member Baker.
Thank you, Chair. And I have to say I'm delighted to see Assemblymember Wilson's newfound commitment to affordable public transport. It's not something that I'd noticed from Reform previously, but I have to say it does seem to be purely political point scoring. Having looked at Reform's manifestos for both the general election this year and the mayoral election, it's absolutely nothing about public transport, London public transport, nothing about the cost of fares and whether they wanted to keep them low, nothing about concessions for older or younger Londoners, which the Mayor has fought to protect. Nothing about improving rail services that so many Londoners rely on, which the Labour government this week has passed legislation to improve. And on top of that, we find referring to pay rises for hard-working public services workers as a splurge. So, Mr Mayor, do you agree that Reform are not interested in supporting the real problems that Londoners face with their public transport?
Well, I think what the Reform Party is a place where people with grievances go because they think Reform have the answers. And I think your articulation of Reform manifestos shows they've not got the answers. And there's a number of choices politicians have, and would-be politicians. One is to address people's concerns, and you've given examples of how this government's addressing those concerns, and we have over the last 8 years, and address people's fears. And two is to play on their fears and play on their concerns. As you know, some members of Reform have done. And I'd respectfully ask those that voted for Reform just to see the evidence of Reform politicians in action. Contrast that with the actions of this government and us over the last 8 years. And it's really important that we do fix the foundations of the economy and public services, which is what the budget last month and my budget early next year are going to carry on doing.
Thank you. Assembly Member Best.
Mr Mayor, let's be honest, the government aren't going to help you freeze TfL fares while they're busy freezing pensioners. You need to be honest about the economic situation that this government inherited, which was far superior to what the previous Conservative government and Lib Dem coalition inherited in 2010. You've seen it in the exchange with Assembly Member Garrett. We've seen how you behave for the past 8 years. Now you have a Labour government. You have a choice to be a Labour mayor who supports Londoners above the government. And please, can you do that? You're not making the representations for London that you once would have done really easily. This is a choice that you have to make, and I hope you make the right one.
Well, it's very important, Chair, to do two things. One is to remind people that when I've frozen TfL fares, the Tories have opposed that, which is really important to do. They went up by 42% under the previous mayor supported by the Tories. So it's really important the record is set straight. But also, secondly, because the criticism is that I'm not lobbying this government for things for London.
Well,
so let me
you
set
promised
out.
that you would show us what you were lobbying, and you haven't published it. So why don't you show us what you did lobby? Because you said I will publish what I've asked the government for ahead of this emergency budget, and you didn't.
So why don't I show the Assembly what I've secured over the last 4 months, in addition to the things I've announced in relation to the answer made by the current leader of the Conservative group. 1,200 zero-emission buses we've secured over the last 4 months. We've managed to get the Secretary of State to lift the directions on the London Plan, really important for our housing. We've got the government to lift the requirement for an infrastructure levy, really important from the government. The government's committed now to a multi-year deal for GLA, never given by the previous government. We've managed to get £1.5 million for the Windrush compensation fund, really important.
This isn't the answer to the question, and actually, if he wants an honest answer, he's actually got much less than the previous government gave you in relation to big things like housing.
The member asked me to show
I asked you to show
this endeavour, and I'm seeking to do so. Now, there are many more things I can show, but the member doesn't want me to carry on. I wonder why that is.
I think that the answer has to relate to the question a bit closer. Before we move on to the next question, I'd like to welcome Year 6 students from Branfield Primary School in Havering. And what we're doing today is we Assembly members are asking questions of the Mayor about how he's doing. And that's the whole basis of what you're seeing today. So we'll go on to the next question, which is in the name of Assembly Member Ahmad, and it concerns the rise in the national living wage.
Thank you. Thanks for your question. I welcome the increased national minimum wage and living wage rates from April 2025 and the government's plan for a single rate regardless of age. In London, we also have the Living Wage Foundation's London Living Wage, which is independently calculated to meet the real cost of living in our city. In October, I announced the new rate of £13.85 per hour. 4,000 employees in London pay this rate, a six-fold increase since I became mayor. The rate itself has increased by 47% since 2016. 140,000 people receive a pay rise each year when the London living wage rate goes up, ensuring they can meet everyday needs, plan their future and handle emergencies. Someone on the London living wage now makes £4,700 a year more than the current national living wage. I'm proud of the Living Wages campaign's progress through austerity, Brexit and COVID-19, Businesses, public sector employers, community and faith groups and others are working together to tackle in-work poverty. However, to ensure we improve lives for all London's communities, this must be underpinned by desperately needed investment in public services. The good news is that October's budget shows we now have a government that understands London's challenges and opportunities. Additional funding for TfL will support crucial maintenance and renewal for our transport system, while confirmation that High Speed 2 will terminate at Euston means more Londoners can experience its full benefits. I'm delighted that the Chancellor announced additional money in London for social housing, for schools and the NHS, with new funding for school breakfast clubs and additional funding for the Affordable Homes Programme. Building on this, the London Growth Plan is now being developed with London councils, businesses, education providers, trade unions and Londoners themselves. It will outline to the government how we can boost jobs and growth in established sectors like finance, tourism, culture and construction, and champion fast-growing industries like life sciences, digital, AI and climate tech. Growth must be inclusive. The plan will help create over 150,000 London jobs by 2028, connecting them with young Londoners from low-income households. I look forward to working with the government on its delivery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And before I move on to my next question, could I just acknowledge the incredible work that's been done with the Universal Free School Meals policy, your groundbreaking Universal Free School Meals policy, which every time I speak to parents, every time I speak to parents, children, school staff members, they want to talk about how brilliant it has been. And of course, it will be complemented by the free breakfast clubs that will be brought in by this Labour government. Mr. Mayor, could you tell us whether you welcome the abolition of the non-DON tax scheme and how it's going to affect London?
So I think it's important that the government does close the loopholes in relation to this area, and that the tax burden is shared. I mean, I've talked about, you know, in the face of opposition, the massive black hole the government's inherited. There is a £22 billion black hole. So the money coming in versus money going out, there's a deficit of £22 billion. Right? It's got to be filled somehow. You can make massive cuts in the service you provide, which happened in 2010, or you can try and raise additional monies coming in, which is what closing the tax loopholes does. And what the Chancellor's got to do is to try and make sure we can, you know, have a situation where we're spending less where we can, we raise more where we can. So I fully support the idea of making, you know, those who currently aren't paying a fair share of tax pay a fair share of tax.
Thank you, Mr.
Assembly Member, can I just ask, I'm not stopping you full on, but you seem to have gone off on a tangent from the content of your original question. If we can get closer to the question, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair, for your intervention. Mr. Mayor, how are you going to work with government to deliver that investment for London?
So it's really important, whenever money's raised from hard-working taxpayers, the money's spent properly. One of the things this government's trying to do is invest in those things that will stimulate growth. Because if there's growth, it means more people getting jobs, more wealth, more prosperity, more tax proceeds coming in to pay for public services. The more we invest in the NHS, it means people are healthier, so they can be working and so forth. So it's a virtuous circle. So examples of some of the announcements the government's already made in 4 months, it's only been 4 months, is almost doubling the amount of money we get for TfL capital. Why is that important? New rolling stock, new buses. Improving roads maintenance, but also creates jobs around the country. Another announcement from the government that is really helping us is saying yes to High Speed 2 stopping at Euston. The previous government decided it would stop in the west of London, Old Dock Common. I've got nothing against the west of London, so my best friends live in the west of London. But we want this high-speed train coming to the centre of our city. Just think about the announcement the government's made before the CSR, £100 million towards the Affordable Homes Programme. So remember, Hirani mentioned the money towards rough sleeping. And so that's just in the first 4 months, notwithstanding the £22 billion black hole. Imagine if they'd had a decent legacy in terms of the inheritance they had, what could have happened. And so it's really important that we support them where we can and work in tag with the government to make sure we you know, get as much investment as we can in public services, because public services are integral to the success of our city.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All good news for London. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Best, and it concerns diary transparency.
Thank you, and thanks for the question. I'm confident that I'm the most transparent mayor ever. Despite the previous government not doing so, my mayoralty puts transparency at the heart of everything we do, and our commitment goes well beyond the mandatory Local Government Transparency Code. We publish interests, gifts, hospitality and expenses for me, the mayoral advisors and senior Greater London Authority officers. We publish details of senior officer responsibilities, salary data and a GLA organogram. We publish hundreds of data sets on the London Data Store, which averages over 125,000 users per month, helping Londoners understand their city and develop solutions to London's challenges. We publish gender and ethnicity pay audit data and action plans. We've signed up to the Code of Practice for Statistics, becoming the first organisation to do so voluntarily. We've pre-announced publication dates for our statistics for enhanced transparency. We're rigorous about both statutory and non-statutory consultations. All our statutory strategies were consulted on widely for between 12 to 14 weeks, including public engagement through Talk London, representative polls, surveys of Londoners, focus groups, interviews and stakeholder and community engagement meetings. My diary is published online. I understand it's published up to the mayoral election. My commitment to publish my diary is beyond what any previous mayor has done. My predecessors did not publish their diaries, nor did they take many of the other steps in transparency I've just described. I also published a monthly report to the Assembly of my key diary engagements. These reports are sent directly to Assembly members 2 weeks before each MQT meeting and published online for anyone to access. They cover my key engagements as well as many of the activities of my deputy mayors and other members of my team. On top of my diary and my report to the Assembly, I answer many questions through the MQT process. I'm told I've answered more than 3,000 mayoral questions this year alone. I'm pleased that through both statutory processes and voluntary publications, London Assembly members and Londoners have unprecedented access to information about the work I'm doing for London.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to remind you, the question was on updating the Assembly on the publication of your diary. And I was pleased by a spooky coincidence. Late last night it was published. It had been not updated for over a year before that. On the question of transparency, and you said there that you're confident you are the most transparent mayor. However, when it came to declaring, tickets for the Taylor Swift concert this summer, not only did you declare those tickets late, not only did you undervalue how much those tickets were worth, but most worryingly, you misdeclared who gave them to you. And that's really important because you were offered those tickets by LS Events in June of 2024 when they were still under a contract for a live tender for a GLA contract. It was your suggestion that you didn't approve those tickets or agree that you were going to till the 14th of August, the day before the concert. Is it really your suggestion to Londoners that you only accepted that you would be going to an event the day before and you expect people to accept that?
Well, Chair, as the member reminded us all, the question was about my diary.
I listened very intently to what the member said. She related it to diary entries, and so for that reason I think it's okay. And may I say that on the previous intervention, the Assembly member absolutely did stick to the question. I've got to be very alert how a discussion is going. And
yeah, I was going to say before.
But it does relate to entries in the diary.
So the question relates to my diary, so I've got a brief in relation to the diary. The question does not relate to concerts I attended, so I've not got a briefing on the concerts I attended.
I imagine that was in your diary, was it not? You went to an event, you went to an engagement on the 14th of August. I imagine that was in your diary. And I'm asking something that I think you would believe, because that's a bit last minute. If I got given Taylor Swift tickets the day before an event, that's something I would remember. I'm asking, are you seriously asking Londoners to believe that you only knew you had those tickets a day before the concert?
Well, I think the member's in danger of conflating, Chair, the diary question with declarations, gifts and hospitalities. I'm very happy to answer a question on those things if she wants to ask them.
Mr Mayor, you actually gave quite a long answer to my very simple question, and in that answer, you yourself decided to ramble about gifts and hospitality for about a minute or so. So thank you for doing that. But if you can conflate it, then I think I can ask about a diary entry, which I'm asking you about now. Are you seriously asking Londoners to believe that you only knew you were going to that concert and that Ellis Events had provided those tickets a day before it happened?
Well, Chair, it's not my briefing, but if someone wants to ask me a question in writing, I'm more than happy to respond or raise it before the next MPTs.
Are you
and I'll get a
seriously
briefing.
asking Londoners to believe that you only knew you were going to a concert the day before? That is something every single person in this room would remember. If you were given concert tickets to such a big event the day before in such a VIP experience, that is something everyone would recall.
The Mayor has given a response to reply to you in writing. Thank
you, Chair. I think his response is really clear to everybody in this room now on how transparent he was around those concert tickets. Given there is a conflation around that and the fact that you accepted what looks like a golden hello, will you be paying back those concert tickets like Keir Starmer has with other tickets?
I'm quite clear in relation to declarations that are made by me and my staff. We were going to carry on declaring anything we receive in gifts or hospitality.
The question is, would you pay it back? The question is, will you pay it back?
Chair, the question was about my diary entries, which I've answered. I'm more than happy to respond if given notice.
I'm sympathetic to your point of view on that, Mr. Mayor. I think if the member could concentrate more on the transparency of the diary. Otherwise, we could be asking questions about every single meeting that he had during, which happened to be in his diary. But if we can relate it to transparency, I'd appreciate it.
In full list of transparency for your diary and looking ahead to contracts and contractors that might be wanting some GLA work next year, is there anything next year you're interested in? Billie Eilish, Lionel Richie, who should we be lining tickets up for you?
Well, Chair, I'm not sure if that's a flippant question or a real question. I'm happy to answer it if it's the case.
But you seem to think that golden hellos are okay, so I'm just wondering who people should be buying you tickets for.
Sure. Well, Chair, let me respond to the question, and because it's only fair that I respond to the question. Can I reassure the Assembly, nobody in my team has been arrested for election betting. Nobody in my team has been involved in a PPE scandal. Nobody in my team has worked for Greensill to get access to lobby me. Unlike the previous government, we're not involved in allegations of criminality or criminality. I'm more than happy to compare and contrast not just my mayoralty with the previous mayor, but with the previous government as well.
Chair, Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, nobody in our team here on the GLA is either, but when you go to whataboutery, it shows how loosely concerned you are on this and how you know there's a big gap, because you're not talking about yourself. You want to put the focus somewhere else, and that makes it really clear there's a problem with what you've done. We know it, it's obvious today, and Londoners know it too. Thank you.
Assembly Member Russell, if you'd like to come in.
Yes, I just wanted to very briefly come in, Mr. Mayor, while we're on the subject of diaries, to ask whether you would agree that in the interests of transparency, that all elected members in this chamber should publish their diaries, even if not legally obliged to.
Chair, what I've sought to do is publish over and above what I'm required to do by the law to provide full transparency. We published, if you remember, gender pay and ethnicity pay as well. And I think the fact that what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander.
I don't know whether that's a yes or a no, but I'll leave it there.
That's a saucy answer. I would remind the Assembly member it's not for the Mayor to make recommendations to us. Very good. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Georgiou, and it concerns international investment.
Thanks for your question. International investment is essential to driving growth and creating jobs for Londoners, so I'll always champion London as the best place to work, live and visit by banging the drum for the capital. And with this new government, we're working in partnership with stakeholders at home and abroad to drive forward investment in the capital and across the UK. Last month, I attended the UK International Investment Summit, at which the government secured £63 billion of inward investment in the UK, including hundreds of millions of pounds of investment in London. I'm very proud that London is the leading European city for foreign direct investment, FDI, this year, and over the past 10 years, we've attracted more FDI projects than any other global city. We also attract major international sporting events to London, bringing huge investment with them, including NFL American football, MLB baseball, NBA basketball, and more. London & Partners, our official business growth and destination agency, promotes London internationally as the top global destination to invest in. London & Partners is leading the way on growth with record-breaking investment deals worth more than £100 million for Londoners so far this year, bucking the global trend. LNP work with partners across the world to attract inward investment and help London firms expand into international markets. I know the Conservatives in the Assembly have tried on occasion to cut their budget, but London & Partners deals have seen companies from China, Europe, India and the US invest in the capital in the last 5 years, with 543 companies creating nearly 10,000 jobs for Londoners in industries of the future, such as tech, life sciences and the green sector. With our investment from City Hall, London & Partners have added over £2.2 billion gross value added to London's economy. Now, through Opportunity London, a unique partnership between all tiers of London government and backed by industry, we're working hard to attract capital investment into London's low-carbon, real estate, energy and infrastructure. Just last week, my Deputy Mayor for Business and Growth led a trade mission with London & Partners in Singapore to attract investment into London and support high-growth London-based businesses to expand internationally. I'll continue to champion London as the best place to invest and do business as part of my new growth plan to help create well-paid jobs and increase opportunities for all Londoners.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and good morning. Look, we both agree that a key part of your job is to be the chief ambassador for London. It's the role of any man or woman who sits in the chair that you're in. It's good that you've noted a number of American teams, sports teams, because it leads me on neatly to my question. You have publicly noted the results of the US presidential election, and we now have a new president-elect. Will you seek to work with President-elect Trump's administration, as you possibly have done with previous US administrations, to encourage as much investment into London as possible?
I'd like to use this opportunity to invite President-elect Trump to next year's Pride in London. I also invite him to attend Friday prayers with me any Friday he wants to come to London, or a Hindu temple, or a Sikh Gurdwara, or a Jewish synagogue. I think it's really important to share the joys of the greatest city in the world with the President-elect, and I look forward to doing just that when he comes to the UK.
Mr. Mayor, can I say I think that's a very good response, that we should be welcoming all democratically elected officials to London to show them what a great city it is. So thank you for the response.
Thank you. Time for Assembly Member Hirani.
Thank you, Chair. The UK Prime Minister has this week announced the relaunch of UK-India free trade talks. What impact will that have on London's economy going forward?
Well, actually, it's great news. When I was in New York in September, we had a very good meeting with Indian IT giant Mphasis, who are coming to London with a massive investment, new London office. They've already come. But India is one of our biggest trading partners. The FDI from India to the UK is colossal. And I think getting a free trade deal with India is important. It was promised, by the way, 3 years ago by Diwali. Didn't happen. Promise made, promise broken.
They didn't say which Diwali.
Yes, didn't say which Diwali. One of the great things about the announcement this week, when the Prime Minister met Prime Minister Modi, was it reminded me that India was the largest source for FDI in the deals that London & Partners have done, which shows the importance of London & Partners, which the Tories wanted to cut. So it is exciting. Fingers crossed we get it home.
Thank you. Perhaps time for a break? How long do we do?
10 minutes, Chair, so 11:33 return.
Back by 11:34, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, we are counted. The next question concerns funding HS2 to Euston, and it's in the same name of Assembly Member Mahfouz.
Thank you for this question. I welcome the government's announcement in the budget that it will allocate funding for tunnelling from Old Oak Common to Euston, so that High Speed 2 will have its terminus in central London. I've consistently made clear that High Speed 2 must come to Euston, and I'm pleased the new government agrees. This funding commitment is a vital step towards ensuring that residents, businesses and visitors have a high-speed service that goes between Birmingham and the heart of the capital. It's also a really important decision for the community in and around Euston. For years, they were planning for High Speed 2 to terminate there, with many businesses and individuals making significant long-term decisions about their lives and livelihoods on that basis, only to have all that turned upside down by the previous government's U-turn on High Speed 2. Local people will be pleased that this new government has put an end to this uncertainty, so they can once again plan for the future. High Speed 2 terminating in Euston means that the benefits of this project of national significance, including billions of pounds in new investment, can be fully realised. It will stimulate economic growth and enable additional housing. HS2 is also a critical part of allowing us to fix the national rail network, and by helping to encourage more people into public transport and creating more capacity for rail freight, it will help us to tackle the climate crisis. Well-planned transport can serve as a catalyst for growth. The Elizabeth line, for example, has had a direct impact on the development and delivery of 55,000 new homes, with the potential to support a further 15,000 new homes and 8,000 jobs. It's well known that Euston Station currently struggles with the number of passengers that use it today, and the new HS2 terminus will substantially increase these flows. TfL is working with HS2 Limited, Network Rail and the Euston Partnership to ensure that the station and bus stations have the appropriate capacity and connections. TfL and the GLA will continue to work with the government to make sure HS2 delivers the best outcomes for Londoners and for the country.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and good morning. Certainly join you in welcoming that announcement to extend HS2 to Euston, as it should have been and was, of course, originally agreed as per the business plan. The previous government, of course, took that decision not to go ahead with the fulfilling that commitment to deliver to HS2 to Euston. I was at the Old Oak Common site recently, which, of course, much of it is in my constituency, and saw the two boring machines that there were ready to go, waiting for a government, progressive government, to make that positive decision. Now, we know that the previous decision was made because of the mismanagement of HS2. With a new government, would you hope for better management of the HS2 project going forward?
One of my experiences with Crossrail is the inheritance, which wasn't great. And in the end, we took Crossrail over. We brought it in-house. First from the Crossrail Limited company to an interim, and then we brought it in-house, and it's important to do so. The good news in relation to the future of High Speed 2 is the appointment of Mark Wilde, who I worked really closely with both at Transport for London, and also his excellent work in relation to making sure that we finished the Elizabeth line, what's formerly called Crossrail. But we're discovering new things about the colossal waste of money in relation to what's happened over the last 14 years. I was in the Department for Transport as a minister when both projects, Crossrail and High Speed 2, begun. Here in London, we see the benefits now of the Elizabeth line. It's open. High Speed 2 is nowhere near opening. And that's why it's really important that the excellent new Transport Secretary, the new Chief Executive of High Speed 2, get a grip of this project, the cost overruns, and finally get it to realise the benefits that it will bring about: additional capacity, speed, and so forth.
Of course, this is an infrastructure project and set out to deliver those benefits that you talked about for commuters into and out of London. There's also going to be significant benefits that should be delivered both in Old Oak Common and at Euston. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the governance there. So first of all, Old Oak Common, you've just made an announcement this week in terms of the nomination of Karen Buck as for the chair of the OPDC. It's really important in terms of having somebody in that role who is going to be driving forward regeneration and genuinely affordable homes in this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to deliver that in places like Ealing and neighbouring Brent and Hammersmith and Fulham. How do you see that going forward?
Well, you know the site really well. I think it's the largest brownfield site in Europe. The potential is humongous. You'll be aware there's a number of boroughs who've got whose boundaries of the land going in various boroughs. I want to thank Liz Pease for the work she's done as chair for a number of years. I think Dame Karen Buck will bring with that project her energy, her enthusiasm, her experience. Her appointment, subject to confirmation, has already been welcomed by a number of the borough leaders who are crucial partners in this. She knows the business community there as well. We've already got some development there, as you know, homes being built, businesses going there, you know, the proximity of Park Royal. And so I think the future is really exciting for that part of London, particularly now we've got certainty around High Speed 2. You will know for a number of years the sort of Damocles was hanging over High Speed 2. Would it happen? Would it not happen? What's the terminus going to be? And all the rest of it and stuff. And that certainty gives confidence. That confidence leads to investment and growth.
Thank you. And if I go to the new end of the line, which is going to be at Euston, there's talk about the Mayoral Development Corporation being initiated there. How do you see that in terms of making sure that we deliver those benefits at Euston and around that station?
Yes, it's a question of finding the right vehicle to bring together the various people and convening people, the Euston Partnership, the Council, High Speed 2, Network Rail, DFT, GLA, so forth and so forth. And we know from the LLDC, the Olympic legacy, we know from Old Oak Common, that DCs provide good vehicles to do so. So we're speaking with Camden Council. It's really important they're happy with whatever structure is set up as key partners, because we want to get going. That includes leveraging in private sector investment as well, really important.
I'm sure businesses and you know, will be really delighted to hear that. And then finally, just going back to the point about the capital investment that we are been desperately waiting for. We've now got that Labour government have made announcements in that budget, £485 million, as you said, more than double what we've received previously from the previous Conservative government. How will that capital funding make a difference here in London?
Well, you'd have thought there'd be a unanimous cheering of the fact we've got almost double the amount of money from DFT, you know, next year compared to last year. But some people are unhappy that we've got this additional funding. They'd rather we didn't have it. I'm really pleased we've got it because it could lead to, you know, maintenance, enhancement, and growth of TfL, but also it leads to jobs around the country. The buses, the trains, the taxis, they're not made in London, they're made across the country. So it's a win-win. London benefits and the rest of the country benefits as well. So look, great news in relation to getting almost double the amount of money next year. The real prize, though, is a multi-year deal. So we'll be lobbying the government to try and get a multi-year deal in next spring, summer's CSR.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The next question concerns planning announcements in the autumn budget, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Small Edwards.
Thanks for your question. In 2023, the London Housing Delivery Task Force warned the then government of a perfect storm of issues that were negatively impacting delivery and put forward a series of recommendations to address them. The previous government left them unaddressed, leading to the worst conditions we've seen since the 2008 global financial crisis. The impacts of a hard Brexit, the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and the macroeconomic fallout of the mini-budget would have been challenging for any sector. But builders were further hit by protracted policy uncertainty over second staircase requirements that stalled many schemes, while a lack of infrastructure investment prevented others coming forward. For affordable housing providers, the impacts have been even more severe. Government investment in new supply has been insufficient, while the pressing need to upgrade existing homes has diverted ever scarcer resources away from new supply. That's why the new government's initial actions to make things right and help the house building sector have been welcome. The budget made available £100 million for affordable homes funding for London and launched a consultation on the social housing rent settlement. It also committed the government to announcing a new affordable homes programme in late spring and announced new investment to speed up social housing cladding remediation, with further details to come later in the year. The new government is also making funding available to recruit 300 planners nationally and has provided twice as much funding to TfL as the previous government provided last year. On top of these announcements, the government is allowing councils to retain 100% of right to buy receipts and extending their ability to borrow more cheaply for council house building. Recent GLA research shows that a 1% decrease in house prices could boost London's economic output by £7.5 billion over a decade, making a clear economic case for prioritising funding that improves housing affordability to support growth in the wider economy. For this reason, I'll continue to work with the government on this new approach, including through the current review of the London Plan and by making the case for a new City Hall Developer Investment Fund.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Mayor. And planning is, of course, as you've articulated, about providing the framework to deliver homes, but it's also about ensuring that the city is well designed and well connected. How does the regeneration of a site like Euston support the sustainable development of London?
Yeah, it's a really important issue that you've highlighted, because you know, businesses now talking about the difficulty recruiting because of lack of affordable housing for potential staff. But the thing about Euston is, you know, it's in the Knowledge Quarter. That great development around St Pancras, you know, Google, British Library, you know, the Crick Institute, so forth. And so, you know, having certainty around Euston is really important, but it's linked with the regeneration of Euston, because too much of that is now blight, housing, businesses, buildings. And so we'll be working with partners there, the Euston Housing Delivery Group, the Council, the Euston Partnership and others, to have regeneration that's inclusive. So those people who were there before see the benefits of it, but also we make sure that we can use the regeneration to unlock major sites in and around Euston that are ripe for regeneration. And frankly speaking, that investment will lead to more housing, will lead to more investment from others, and good for business.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And more broadly, the government have put planning kind of central to their plans moving forward. Do you agree with their assessment that speeding up the planning process is essential to unlocking growth? And if so, how is that going to influence the development of the New London Plan?
Well, there's a number of things the government's already announced in the first 4 months that I think will benefit development taking place. One is not to call in things for political reasons like the previous government did. Secondly, making it easier to get permission. The phrase used by the government is they want to be the builders, not the blockers, really important. 3 is if you know, there's a situation where councils, you know, aren't given as much permission as they should for the right sorts of homes, the government will take away from the councils that, you know, powers they've got, which incentivises councils to make sure they make progress in relation to permissions being granted. And so for this is a nationwide issue, by the way, not just the London issue as well. I mentioned the government, you know, paying for planners to go and, you know, be working in local authorities and stuff as well. So look, I think a number of things the government has done is shown its commitment to planning and development, and I'm hoping there's more good news when it comes to the CSR, you know, next spring as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
The next. Val, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Thank you very much. In terms of just listening to the previous question and answer session, on the planning process, it clearly is important, and the changes that have been indicated by government in terms of that. But that's not the only answer in terms of the growth issue that you raised in your answer earlier on, isn't there? There's some other issues. And then essentially it comes back to reappraising some of the roles and approaches that we made. So in terms of provision of housing through the planning process system and the changes that made, there are other barriers that stop some of that growth. Can you tell us what your thinking is now about that, and particularly in terms of what the future Housing and Land team can do about unblocking some of those powers? Obstacles, sorry, not powers.
Yeah. No, thanks for your question. And you know, I think your previous experience as the leader of the council, you'll be aware of some of the challenges. They've not changed. The difficulty in assembling land, there's obstacles there. How difficult a CPO is for a council is a good example. When it comes to most councils now, if you just think about the services council I've got to provide by law, temporary accommodation, social care, children's services, most councils now spend most of their money doing that, and so their planning department's hollowed out. And so they have rings rung around them by developers and can't process applications that are good either. So those are just some of the examples of the obstacles. I'll give you another one. Councils who want to build can't use the receipts from Right to Buy with a grant when it comes to building council homes is another challenge they have. Cash flow issues. The rates of borrowing, even from the public sector loans board, you know, aren't as good as they could be. So one of the ideas we've got is a City Hall Developer Fund where we could basically support councils, housing associations, private developers in relation to getting things going, and we'd sometimes get the money back in relation to a loan once they'd sold parts of the land off or homes off. Sometimes it'd be a grant. So the number of problems that have been highlighted to us, which we think are fixable, not just requiring money from the government, but just changing the laws, changing the regulations would make a big difference.
And do you think the emphasis then, in terms of post these planning reforms, is about concentrating, accelerating the process of housing development in all its forms? It's not, but also maintaining quality, isn't it? I mean, isn't that one of the issues relating, coming back to the London plan, that we want quality build, and in terms of quality growth as well as a quality approach, but with speed?
Yes, but we're not going to sacrifice good quality design for the sake of units of houses, flats. We want good quality homes with good design, and it's possible to do so if you have design at the conceptions phase, which we've got in many of our London plans. The issue is making sure councils have got the resources to support developers doing so. But one of the lessons from Grenfell is doing housing right. We can also use housing, by the way, to address the issue of the climate emergency. Being carbon positive in relation to this areas as well, making sure there's heat pumps and so forth. So, done right, you can stimulate the economy, you can create jobs, you can tackle a number of crises we have, turn those into an opportunity.
Thank you.
And if we can just put, I'm going to come in on this one on the clock. I assume your reference to governments not getting involved in taking power away from planning authorities would also, for political reasons, would also relate to the government calling in the development for the Chinese embassy in Tower Hamlets, which was unanimously rejected by local councils, and that rejection was supported by yourself.
Two things to say in response, Chair. One is that was called in by the government, not by City Hall. It's important to get the facts correct there. Secondly, it may still come to City Hall in relation to future applications, so it's quasi-judicial, so I've got to be a bit careful what I say on the merits.
If it comes back, I understand. I do understand. Thank you very much. Back off the clock now. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Clark, and it concerns fire safety in the home.
Thank you. Thanks for your question. Winter usually brings an increase in fire safety risks across the capital from people using alternative methods to keep warm, and most associated fires are easily preventable. Gas prices have led many to turn to portable heaters, electric blankets and wood burners as alternatives to keep warm. Winter also sees increase in use of candles in dark evenings. Sadly, it's those who are the most exposed to the cost of living crisis that are often the most vulnerable to a wide range of fire risks in winter. It's essential that Londoners understand fire safety precautions when trying to save money on keeping warm in winter. Electrical heaters should be used with care and kept away from clothes, curtains and furniture. They should be used with care around children and pets. People should check their heater isn't on a product recall list and should always have their heaters repaired or serviced by a professional. There's also carbon monoxide risk associated with some kinds of heater, which can be fatal. That's why it's so important to always fit a carbon monoxide alarm in rooms with solid fuel, gas or paraffin heaters. Candles should never be left unattended, and people should consider using battery-powered flameless LED candles instead. Anyone considering purchasing or giving e-bikes and e-scooters as gifts should be aware of how to look after them safely. Lithium-ion batteries are the fastest growing fire risk trend in London, and most fires related to e-bikes and e-scooters have taken place in homes, often while batteries are charged. Another members campaigned a lot on this issue and has commended the LFB for their own campaign, #ChargeSafe. I urge all London households to complete the LFB's Home Fire Safety Checker, which supports Londoners to self-access any fire risks in the home and get tailored advice on how to put them right. It's easy to use and only takes a few minutes to complete. The LFB focuses its resources on those most at risk, which means those who complete the checker and are classed as very high risk will receive contact from firefighters within 4 hours. Further information is available on the LFB website.
Thank you for your answer. And I've asked you similar questions. I think every year I've been on this assembly because this is the time of year where you're quite right. People go, they'll buy candles as gifts. I was just out shopping yesterday looking for a prize for my Christmas card competition. And in every shop there was a candle gift set. And so I think it does speak to the type of purchases people make this type of year. And I'm delighted you also touched on e-bikes and e-scooters because it's absolutely, again, the time of year where people are looking for a good deal on a retrofit kit. They can look, harder and deeper online and still find such things to save money. But unfortunately, it often doesn't save lives. How is the LFB engaging with communities to spread their messages about fire safety this winter?
Yes, it's a really important point. I think prevention is far better than the alternative. And so what the LFB is doing is engaging through the usual channels, television, radio, and social media. And hopefully she'll have seen some of the messaging they did around Halloween, around Diwali, and around Bonfire Night, which was really important. And as Christmas approaches, there'll be similar public awareness campaigns as well. The LFB's also got some of their open day events taking place, and they're also organising, through the home fire safety visits, raising awareness, leaflet distribution, and so forth. But any help members can give, many members have got thousands following them on social media, would really be appreciated, I'm sure, by the LFB.
And another element of this is actually the things like leaky windows, standards of home, where people have things like mold and damp, so they open their windows, then it's cold again. I was having a chat recently with a firefighter who said that actually, it's poverty that is often at play here. And I wonder if you could tell us what you've done from City Hall in terms of making London's homes warmer.
So I'm afraid you're right in relation to reminding us about the issue of damp and mould in people's homes. And often the advice they receive is open your windows to get circulation going in your home. And it's freezing. I mean, temperatures today are sort of 0 degrees, I think. The idea of opening your window is not attractive. And so it's very important to recognise a lot of this are design issues with the buildings and so forth. So lots of things we're doing from City Hall. Assemblyman Duval referred to the issue of design. So in the Affordable Homes Programme, we make sure that you're required to have good quality design when it comes to those homes. The London Plan has requirements over and above national regulations, really important. We're doing a huge amount of work in relation to just remediating the cladding of existing stock, but also improving the cladding. The Warmer Homes Programme is really important in relation to retrofit for those with low incomes. And I know you'll be really pleased with the government saying that they're going to extend Awab's law. Awab was the young chap, Awab Ishaq, 2 years old, who lost his life because of damp in his home in Rochdale. They'll be extending that law so it covers all homes, which is really important.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Assemblymember Duval, please.
Going back to your earlier answer to Assemblymember Clark around using some of our own networks in terms of promotion, I think is really quite good. But I think you're in on something around what's really missing, because I think the Fire Brigade have come on incredibly well in terms of some of their messages, and you're right to point out the most recent ones. But shouldn't we, really what we want is some national messaging, but also what we could do regionally is we need other partners to come on board. And I just wondered whether it's not too late that we could you could write to London local government through London councils or even individual authorities saying, here are some messages from the FB. We would really appreciate you making sure that you put those out through your network. Some councils are doing it. I just think we're missing an opportunity here. And particularly if we were thinking about the most vulnerable around whether it's young children or older members of our community that are affected by some of these fires and the risk. And I continue, and we have raised it before, the issue around some of the issues of these batteries and these retrofits. We need to continually keep reminding people about the storage, because we can't just do it for a short period and then think everyone's okay, because life's not like that. It does need constant reminder. So we've got to get other people on board. Do you agree with that? And can we even do something emergency, but build up to some of this work for next winter, but continually with the e-bikes. But I do think, I'm saying this not as criticism to the Fire Brigade, I think they've done some really excellent messaging, but we need to get it wider. Our networks, you're right in that suggestion. Are there other networks that we can do within the local government family, regional family, or even other organisations, just alerting people to these dangers that exist that can be minimised?
Look, as the member's been speaking, I've been thinking about what more we can be doing. It's only November the 20th. There's plenty of time for us to do something this year, by the way, and the joy of social media is we can move quickly. So look, let me take this away. So in addition to the work, as a consequence of your question, I'll ask Jules Pipe and Will Norman to look into the specific areas that affect their portfolios. But I think I'll ask my comms team to look at what more we can do. GP practices, I was thinking as you're speaking, schools, retailers and so forth. So let me take that away. And again, I say to colleagues around this room, if there's any ideas colleagues have got, we could be saving lives by raising awareness. And so it's that serious and stuff. So can I take that away? But thank you for raising that. No, forget next year. I think we can do it this year, by the way.
Thank you. And there's also the TfL estate as well. Assembly Member Bakari on this? Yeah,
just very, very quickly, I know that there are the family members of the first victims of the e-bike fatality have been asking for more public awareness, particularly on TfL, and making sure that there's an understanding that why there is public safety adverts on e-bikes and e-scooters and why that is. They've been pushing for this for quite a while now, and I do hope that the Mayor's taking account on the families' asks on this particular type of public awareness.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a yes from the Mayor, I think. The next question comes from Assembly Member Turrell, and it concerns working with British Transport Police.
Thank you, and thanks for your question. The Mayor of London's office does not oversee the British Transport Police. The BTP is the responsibility of the British Transport Authority and the Transport Secretary. TfL does regularly work closely with the BTP to ensure that our transport network is safe and secure for staff and customers. The BTP is responsible for policing in the London Underground, DLR, London Tramlink, London Overground and the rail network in London, as well as the railway network across the rest of England, Wales and Scotland. Our relationship with BTP is primarily managed through TfL, but my office and the office of the BTP Authority Chair, Ron Barclay-Smith, have a strong relationship and they work together directly as needed. We often come together as part of wider meetings, such as the Home Secretary's Knife-Enabled Robbery Task Force last month, and the BTP themselves are represented in the partnership meetings we stand up in response to any relevant major incident. My Deputy Mayor for Transport, Seb Dance, also meets regularly with the Chief Constable of the BTP. TfL and the BTP work closely on shared priorities, particularly around serious violent crime, hate crime and violence against women and girls. In fact, TfL's Chief People Officer is on the BTP Authority. The BTP and TfL take a zero-tolerance approach to these types of crime and all forms of abuse on the network. The important work of the BTP is reflected in my Police and Crime Plan and my strategy to end violence against women and girls. TfL, BTP and the BTP Authority also agree an annual policing plan for London's transport. This plan sets out shared objectives and key performance indicators across a range of issues. This includes reducing disruption to the railways from trespass and criminal damage, tackling sexual harassment, and protecting frontline staff from work-related violence and aggression. To facilitate this work, a Chief Officers Group meets 3 times a year. This is co-chaired by TfL Chief Operating Officer Claire Mann and BTPA Chief Executive Hugh Ind, with Lucy Dorsey, PTP's Chief Constable. TfL's Director of Security, Policing and Enforcement, Shuan Hayward, also meets regularly with Hugh Ind. There are meetings on specific issues of importance as required, including between BTP's chief officers and the deputy mayors for transport and policing. The BTP is fully integrated also into joint working governance, for example, participating in the London Criminal Justice Board and the Pan-London Hate Crime Stakeholder Reference Group with MOPAC.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon. As you say, the British Transport Police do very difficult work, especially in getting the London transport network reopened after incidents like suicides. Do you think it's sustainable that we continue to ask the British Transport Police to do this while also policing the train lines?
Well, often there's issues of safety concerned in relation to reopening lines, so I can understand why they're involved. And often you'll be aware it's quite traumatic for staff members who witnessed this in the aftermath as well. So I want to thank them for the work they do there, and as distressing as it is. There's only about 3,000 officers who've got to do the entire country, so I appreciate the concern raised about finite resources and stuff, but it's an important job they do. Fortunately, there are fewer of those incidents, but it's an important work they do, and I'm very grateful for it.
Thank you. As you mentioned in a previous answer, a written answer to me back in September, Transport for London provide the British Transport Police with £85 million a year. As chairman of TfL, how do you and your team ensure that Londoners are getting value for money from that?
It's a really important question. So, you know, this is we also have TfL also has an arrangement with Metropolitan Police Service, which there's remuneration involved in relation to services above and beyond that normally the MPS would provide. So the Commissioner of TfL, through his team, will check the service provided by BTP and MPS, will check the service provided by TfL's own enforcement officers, and ensure, sorry it sounds crude, but that we get value for money as a client, if you like, as TfL. It's not different to other people who use BTP or MPS services. Heathrow Airport, for example, you know, is I use the word invoiced by MPS for some additional security advice the MPS provides, and that's quite normal across the country.
Are you satisfied with the amount of public accountability that the British Transport Police are scrutinised by?
Yeah, I think the current system where the Transport Secretary, where there's a BTP authority, works is really well. The Chief Constable happens to be a former Met Police officer, which helps, and we know very well. And so the relationship is very good. Not just the support, but the way that the BTP is held to account. You know, you'll appreciate there are a number of agencies we work with. There are separate systems of accountability for each of them, and you know, to a large extent, we're going to trust the process, and the process works. And I'm confident there's no issues that have come to my attention that leads me to believe that the system doesn't work with the BTP.
Yeah, and building on that, for my final question then is around the relationship with how the BTP works, especially how it's funded compared to other police forces. And as we mentioned earlier about the overstretching of the BTP in regards of what their various different things are. So thinking solely about policing on the trains themselves to improve the police presence on our public transport network, because I think many Londoners right now don't particularly feel safe on the transport network. There's a number of concerns about safety at stations like London Victoria. And I just wondered your views on whether we should be looking at whether the policing of the trains themselves should be devolved to London to be carried out either by the Met or by a London Transport Police.
Well, if transport in London stayed in London, there'd be an argument for, you know, the policing of transport in London to be done by, you know, specific London police force or police service, but it doesn't. And you mentioned a station where the trains come in from outside London, so you can see the joined upness. I'll give you an example: football games. When there's fans coming into London and fans going out of London, BTP are on the trains often. Often they're covert, you won't know they're there. To give you an idea of crime on you know, the Underground, for every 1 million journeys, there's about 15 reports of a crime. So it's a low-crime environment. And the BTP are one of the reasons why it's a low-crime environment. Of course, in the perfect world, we'd want another 3,000 BTP officers, and they all be in London. But I can understand the pressure of resources where they've got to be, you know, used elsewhere. I think we got a good deal. Think about counter-terror, think about big events in London, think about the work they're doing on Vogue. And, you know, I want to thank them for the work they do, and thanks for asking the question, which enables me to do so.
Thank you. That's me done, Chair.
Thank you. The next question concerns continuing the conversation on rent controls, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Garbett.
Thank you, and thanks for the question. I'm pleased that the Assembly member shares my ambition to address unfair skyrocketing rent increases which continue to fuel London's housing affordability crisis. With London's average rents almost 60% higher than the median figure in England as a whole, I'm very concerned about the impact of high housing costs on Londoners. I've been acting on this for as long as I've been mayor, and I've consistently made the case for London to have all the tools it needs to address its housing challenge, including the devolved power to control rents. My City Hall team has had extensive conversations with renters, landlords and stakeholders across the sector. Right now, we're focusing on what we can do within our existing powers to bring about change for Londoners. We've always focused on genuinely affordable housing in 2022-2023, starting the most council homes in any year since the 1970s and completing the highest number of homes since the 1930s. And now we're developing plans to build 6,000 new rent control homes by 2030, new affordable homes for rent, with rents capped and linked to key worker pay. I'm pleased to say we'll shortly be launching a consultation on how these can be delivered. Private renters also need safe and stable homes, and I'm delighted that the new government has moved rapidly to introduce the Renters' Rights Bill, which will finally abolish unfair Section 21 evictions. The long-term solution to ensuring rents are at an affordable level is to deliver more homes of all types, but especially socially rented and affordable housing. I stand ready to work with the government to realise its plans to build 1.5 million homes, in which I want London to play a significant role. I'm proud of London's record on delivery, with my 2016-2023 Affordable Homes programme delivering record-breaking numbers of affordable homes. I'm engaging with the government to ensure the current programme can adapt to the challenging market conditions and secure a new ambitious programme for 26 and beyond as we work to build 40,000 new council homes by the end of the decade. I look forward to seeing the recommendations from the Members' Rent Commission, and my Deputy Mayor for Housing, Tom Copley, would welcome the opportunity to continue the conversation with the member.
Thank you. I particularly welcome that commitment at the end. That's great to hear, because my Rent Commission held in this chamber brought together renters, academics, renters advocate groups and think tanks who were in this space talking about how we need to tackle the affordability rent crisis in London. We heard from renters who had experienced £400 a month, increase a month in their rents last January. One renter saying they're expecting to have to leave their home soon. People talking about the big impact that how these high rents are having on their lives. They were really keen to come into this space, and they really wanted me to bring these recommendations to you. It also showed how important it was to have these spaces so that all of those people could come together to speak about rent controls and how we can make them work. So I just wanted to ask if you have considered assembling a rent commission.
So you'll be aware that the previous report we did, I think, in 2019, talked about the government giving us the powers to set up a private renters commission. We've not got those powers yet, so I'm reluctant to incur resources in setting up a commission, but also we've not got the powers to get, for example, the list of all the landlords, how much rent each tenant is paying, what the agreement is, and so forth. So we're doing what we can with the powers we have, and very shortly, in fact, we'll begin a consultation on 6,000 new rent control homes, and those who are at the Members' Commission will hopefully be responding to the consultation and getting involved in the design of those 6,000 new homes.
And what we did hear is the urgency of this. Building rent control homes is part of the solution, but this is something that we could be doing now. The Rent Commission was a really important space to have that conversation, and there's a slight cost in bringing it together in terms of organising it, and we did kind of support some of the renters to come along, but it's a very low cost, it's just a meeting of people getting us ready for those powers. It's great to hear that you have previously pushed for those powers. I wanted to know if this is something that you're lobbying government on to get rent control powers as part of the devolution white paper.
The government's current policies is not in favour of rent controls, and so we're doing what we can to try and persuade them to change their minds in relation to this issue. In relation to more devolution, clearly the English Devolution Bill gives us an opportunity in relation to more powers we want as a city. The reason why we need the additional powers, park for a second the issue of rent controls, is to get the information we need, which will formulate a policy in relation to this. We can also learn from other cities and countries. Scotland, for example, have begun this. They brought in rent controls in relation to new properties rather than existing ones, and now they're going to bring in legislation for existing ones as well. So we'll watch that closely, because there may be lessons we can learn from Scotland as well.
So is this something, you mentioned that you've previously been calling on the government for the devolution of rent control powers. So is that something you're currently lobbying them for?
There's a number of things we'll be looking for in the English Devolution Bill, which hasn't been published yet. I think it's going to be a white paper, so let's wait and see the white paper. It may be in the white paper, and then we'll certainly be lobbying for inclusion in response to the white paper in relation to things we want to be devolved to London.
That's great, and know that you've got the support of the 2 million Londoners who are privately renting. The Rent Commission really showed the kind of urgency and how much they want to support you in putting that case forward. You mentioned data, and that's one of the things that came out of the Rent Commission, that we do need better data, and it's something that it would be great to hear if you're looking into that. I also wanted to just say it's a space for the Renters' Rights Bill. We know that doesn't tackle affordability, so it's a space to hear from renters about how that's going for them. So it'd be great for you to consider bringing together the meeting of these people, even as just a starting point to just hear from them to help you make that case to government. Well,
one of the reasons why the Deputy Mayor is keen to meet with you is to discuss these very issues. I mean, there are 3 big issues in relation to those who are renting. One is clearly the rent and the amount of rent they pay. Second is the quality of home, or lack thereof. And thirdly, security of tenure. And the Renters' Rights Bill addresses 2 of those things, not the third one, clearly. The supply of new homes will hopefully address the third one.
Yes, thank you. And I will be sending you the report, and I welcome the meeting with the Deputy Mayor, so thank you.
Thank you. The next question is in my name. I'm looking at the Deputy Chair, if he's OK for me to chair during this. So,
thank you, Chair.
On Bean Park Station.
Thank you. A new station at Bean Park is essential for unlocking thousands of new homes in the area. Planning and development work for the project shows that the station would unlock at least 5,000 new homes in the area and support local regeneration, access to services and jobs. 1,572 of those homes are within the Bean Park scheme specifically, and of those 50% will be affordable. But these cannot be built until the station is complete. I share the frustration of local residents that the new station has been delayed due to the previous government withdrawing support. That was despite the GLA committing to fund the development of the station and underwrite running costs for 10 years. My officers are leading on the modelling work, and since spring this year have convened a multi-stakeholder working group including the GLA, TfL, Network Rail and the train operator C2C. The work consists of 2 studies, and good progress has been made in the last few months. The first of these 2 studies is the timetable and performance analysis, which considers the impact of the proposed station on the existing rail network. This work has been completed and is currently undergoing a final review by Network Rail's technical teams. The second study is the demand and revenue modelling, which is ongoing. A range of issues have affected the programme for this work stream, including delays in receiving and agreeing cost assumptions, and more recently technical issues with the modelling systems due to the TfL cybersecurity incident. These issues have been resolved and the work is resumed. It is expected to complete in Q4 of this financial year. Because of the delays, it's been agreed to speed up the next stage of the work and to commence it in parallel to the completion of the transport modelling. My officers have commissioned Network Rail to proceed to the detailed design stage, supply chain engagement and value engineering of the proposals. We're currently working with Network Rail to assess the detailed requirements for that stage of work so that it can start promptly in the new year. Partners are committed to finding a delivery route for this project, working closely with the new government, as unlocking the station will bring about much needed housing in London. I know there's support from across various stakeholders for this scheme, so I'm hopeful that the project will be able to move forward at pace. Thank you. In answer to a question from my colleague Ellie Baker back in, who asked a question in 2022 and only received a reply 2024, you told her that the modelling work for Bean Park Station would be completed by this spring, or the spring that's just gone. What were the reasons for the delay, bearing in mind the cyber attack wasn't until after that date? The main reason was for the delay in receiving the cost assumptions, which were part of the work we're required to do. We've now got those. And what meetings have you had with government with regard to the urgent case for Bean Park Station? At this stage, we need the technical work to be done. DfT have agreed in relation to working with us, subject to the technical work being completed. DfT have said that the further work, once the technical work has been done, can take place once we do the technical work. We can't have the conversations without the work being done. The government has the government removed the viability test that any fares generated by the new station must cover any additional operational costs for 3 years? I'm not sure the detail of that, but I'm happy to write. If you could write to me to see whether or not the government has withdrawn that position.
You mentioned that the previous government withdrew support for Bean Park Station. Did any government ever give any support to Bean Park Station?
Yeah, I mean, the conversations were very positive in the past. In 2021, the DfT withdrew support. They wrote to us saying it was not supportive of the delivery of Bean Park Station, which is why the project was paused. We then began negotiations with the DfT in relation to, resuming this work, and the DfT said that we should do the technical work, which means they could revisit the issue of whether they were supportive or not. That the work, it can't take place without government support.
Absolutely can't take place with government support. And I very much, well, you don't need to have the case made to you that there are a lot of people in Bean Park who've bought their homes on the basis that there would be a station there, and are now thoroughly disappointed and disenchanted as a result of this delay. When do you think Bean Park Station will open?
Well, that's probably why they voted Labour on July the 4th. It depends what the two pieces of work sets out. There's a grampian condition, which means that 1,500 homes can't be built without the station being opened. So we're hoping that common sense prevails with the new government in relation to the station being given the green light. The two pieces of work that I talked about in my original answer are clearly important, and we'll work with DfT once that technical work is done.
Is it fair to say that we won't be seeing the station opened this side of 2027?
I'm not sure the timelines. What I do know is the money set aside. We've not spent the money. So the good news is the £32 million is there. What would have been disastrous if we'd spent the money on another project?
Well, the money may be there, but it's no good unless you spend it, really. And the opportunity to spend it will only happen once the station's open. When do you think it's going to be open?
I think we're going in circles. The two pieces of work have got to be done. The two pieces have got to be done. Once technical work is done, conversations begin with the DfT. Should we get the green light, then construction can begin.
So, who's caused the delay?
The previous government.
Funny that. Right, we'll go back.
It was Conservative, if that helps.
We'll go back to the order. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Desai, and it concerns crime on high streets.
Thanks for your question. Shoplifting is increasing nationally, and in London, Mopac is working with the Met Police Service and businesses to ensure offenders are caught and prosecuted. Working closely with the MPS Business Crime Team and partners to crack down on crimes including shoplifting, and to ensure that police continue working with small businesses and trade unions to stamp out unacceptable violence against shop workers and frontline workers. The new government is also committed to creating a new specific offence for assaults on shop workers that will protect them from threats and violence, which I fully support. Mopac officers regularly meet with the business community, including the Safer Business Network, to better understand the challenges businesses are facing and how the MPS can improve its response to retail crime. Mopac has also initiated meetings with business improvement districts across London to ensure they and the MPS are doing all they can to reduce the levels of retail crime and violence against shop workers. The Met Police Service is continuing to refine its flagship Operation Retail Initiative, which aims to improve the Met Police Service response to retail crime and improve reporting. I know my Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime recently went to see the great partnership work taking place with the retailers and police in Stratford with the Assembly member and the new local MP, Uma Kumaran. The MPS also convenes the London Retail Harm Reduction Partnership, a quarterly meeting that includes leading retailers. The support and protection of retail staff is integral to the work of this partnership. The Met Police Service has allocated 500 officers to bolster town centre teams as part of its commitment to strengthen local policing. This work in town centres will no doubt benefit not just those who live nearby, but those who visit, work and travel through our town centres.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, a few days ago, a security guard working in the Ulster in Stepney Green was stabbed in the thigh. This was at 11:43 in the morning. He was treated and taken to a major trauma centre. Thankfully, his injuries were not life-threatening. Ulster have asked for making a tax on retail workers to be recognised as a specific offence. And I believe that the Home Secretary is considering bringing this proposal forward in the forthcoming police bill. Do you agree?
It's really important that a message is sent loud and clear, this is unacceptable. I do agree with that proposal. I think it's really important for there to be harsher sentences for those who assault frontline staff. He'll be aware that previously any offence where the item stolen was less than £200 wasn't taken seriously because of legislation. This government's going to change that. So, inverted commas, low-value shoplifting is taken more seriously and isn't just a summary offence. It's really important to address this issue. It's causing families to be distressed. That security guard you mentioned, just imagine not just his fear, but the impact on his family as well.
Indeed. Mr. Mayor, you mentioned trade unions in your answer, in your main answer. Will you join me, Mr. Mayor, in commending the work of the Ulster Trade Union, the GMB Trade Union, the Cooperative Group, including the Cooperative Party, the British Retail Consortium, and many others working in this area, and consider mounting a major publicity drive through the various channels you and your office have access to highlight the important work that retail workers do and the appalling abuse and attacks that they have to suffer? I'm
more than happy to look into what we can do to support our retail workers. I spent many Saturdays, many summers, many holidays doing this sort of work as members of my family, as I'm sure members of the Assembly have as well, and their families and friends as well. They're working incredibly hard during this Christmas period. As well. So firstly, of course, I can commend and congratulate the work of those great trade unions and the Cooperative Party and the British Retail Consortium. GMB and USDRA are fantastic, and this is another example why I'd encourage everyone to join trade union.
Thank you. Couldn't agree more, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has also pledged to introduce respect orders to curb antisocial behaviour, which bans persistent antisocial offenders, street drinkers, drug users, and shoplifters from town centres. What role do you think will the introduction of these orders play in the Met's efforts to crack down on persistent antisocial behaviour?
Well, I think both of us, through our respective jobs as representatives of our communities, have seen the blight that antisocial behaviour has on communities. Unfortunately, sometimes the threshold for criminal offence isn't reached when it comes to some antisocial behaviour offences, small o. So what a respect order is about is a civil remedy with a lower burden of proof, which you can take out against somebody who's causing antisocial behaviour or a group of people. So that person or that group knows there's now a respect order against them. But if they breach the respect order, it can become a criminal offence. And it will only happen if somebody's behaving in a way that's persistent and causing real concern, blight, fear, distress to communities. And I support this measure, which has been announced by the new Home Secretary. It's really important that persistent adult offenders of antisocial behaviour have action taken against them and are banned from public areas where they're causing harm to communities.
Mr. Mayor, finally, retail workers at all levels, small corner shopkeepers, people working in supermarkets, were recognized as heroes and heroines during COVID. And the level of attacks on them is simply unacceptable. Thank you for your answers and all the work you're doing. And I must say that under no circumstances, I'm sure you'll agree, attacks on our retail workers, frontline workers, public servants can ever be tolerated. Our position that the Assembly, bar one group that abstained, decided to take when I brought a motion forward in support of retail workers and their right to work in a safe environment last year.
Well, I fully support the words set out in the motion, and I fully agree with the sentiment behind the question. I agree with that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The next question concerns public toilets and accessibility, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Russell.
Thanks for your question and for your hard work in this area. Access to toilets is critical to many Londoners, sometimes being a factor in whether a customer can travel by public transport. TfL has delivered considerable accessibility improvements to the transport network in recent years, but there's much more work to do. Early this year, I committed to the biggest investment in toilet facilities in London's history from City Hall, £3 million per year. TfL will use this money to improve and increase the number of accessible toilets on the network. Our ambition is to close the gap in current toilet provision so that the Tube, Overground and Elizabeth Line customers are always within 20 minutes of a toilet without having to change train. Following extensive engagement with customers, campaigners and staff, TfL carried out a feasibility study to identify potential sites. This considered customer views alongside practical considerations to identify locations of most potential benefits to customers. TfL is now bringing forward new toilet facilities at Clapton, Colindale, Paddington, West Ham, Morden, Hammersmith, Camden Town, White Hart Lane, South Tottenham and New Cross Gate. TfL is also looking to convert 5 existing non-accessible toilets to accessible facilities at Amersham, Green Park, Leighton and Sudbury Hill Underground stations and Seven Sisters Overground Station as part of a first tranche of works. It's also now a requirement that new stations and major upgrade projects include accessible toilets. Where space is limited, accessible toilets will be prioritised. There remain considerable challenges when retrofitting accessible toilet facilities into stations, as these are often space constrained, with some constructed in Victorian times. Providing water and drainage into these spaces is difficult and costly. Antisocial behaviour and crime in toilets remains a big challenge for TfL to manage and affects its efforts to improve provision across the network. It's important to ensure that facilities remain open and in a good condition, and to ensure that the safety of station staff is not put at risk. I want to thank the Assembly member for her role in championing the importance of toilets on TfL's network. I was pleased that she was able to attend the recent event at White Hart Lane Station with my Deputy Mayor for Transport, where TfL announced these plans for further toilet provision.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the invitation to White Hart Lane and also to your team at TfL, who have done a really solid job on getting started on making our transport network more accessible with more toilets. Now, just last week, here at City Hall, I hosted Transport for All, who launched a report calling for transport planning to be more inclusive. And they suggest measuring 3 additional things to make planning our city work better for disabled people. And that's the volume of crowding in stations, whether there's step-free access, and the availability of public toilets. Now, will you ask your London Plan team to meet with Transport for All to discuss their report's conclusions and adopting those 3 extra things they think need to be measured?
Yes. Can I also thank her for convening this group and having those recommendations? So we'll take that forward, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. So this Tuesday was World Toilet Day, and I hope you noticed people making a massive fuss about the need for public toilets. All the campaigners that I met on the day welcomed the new loos on the tube, but they are worried about the 20 minutes travel time between toilets being a bit too long. Now, anyone with Crohn's and colitis doesn't have 20 minutes to wait to reach a loo. As you prepare your budget, will you put more funding into toilets to bring down the planned gap between loos on London's transport network?
Firstly, can I just say I do admire the member. Working in partnership with others, she persuaded me to invest recurring £3 million in this area last year. And she comes back this year to ask for more money in relation to public toilets. Look, we'll be publishing the group budget in January, and her representations will be heard loud and clear.
I'll wait to see what they say, what you say in the budget. So finally, since 2017, I've been raising the problem of lack of toilets for bus drivers. In 2018, you promised bus drivers would have additional toilets by 2020. So it was disappointing to hear from the TUC on World Toilet Day in 2024 in their Toilets at Work report that bus drivers are still worried about bleeding through on their period, getting UTIs from holding it in, and not drinking enough to stay hydrated. Can you explain what's happening with bus driver toilets?
No, I'm surprised to hear that. I remember in 2016 when I first announced the policy for there to be toilets for bus drivers being mocked by some in this Assembly, not the Green Party, by the way. It's really important. It's a basic human right. You've mentioned some examples of the consequences of not having decent toilets. Let me take that away and speak to the various trade unions and TUC represent all of them about what's gone on there, but it shouldn't be happening.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Mr Mayor.
And the Green Group is now out of time. The next question concerns transport for school children, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Baker.
Can I thank the member for her question? All children aged 17 and under and those attending school aged 18 or over living in Greater London can apply for free travel on all TfL buses. The previous government wanted me to stop this, but I was and am unwilling to do so. In the past financial year, more than 40% of secondary school children and 17 to 18-year-olds travelling for education purposes in London have travelled by bus. In this same year, a total of 307 million free child bus trips were made. TfL plans for children to travel to and from school on its existing bus network, and more than 9% of school children travel to school using mainstream bus services. There are 40 routes where a specific school travel need has been identified and additional school day capacity added. In certain cases, such as a school being too distant from the main TfL network, TfL provides school-specific routes. These routes typically serve a particular school and their start and end times are planned with the school. School travel patterns change with each academic year, and schools are asked to provide information to TfL when they believe there will be a significant change to their demand pattern. TfL monitors usage by conducting a large number of surveys through the first half term of the academic year. More than 100 surveys have taken place so far this academic year. As with the rest of its network, TfL always plans to provide the required capacity and seeks to adapt the network to meet the demands of Londoners.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, I've had more discussions about school children on buses over the past few months than I ever thought I would do. And I've come to the conclusion that having dedicated school buses could allow TfL to more carefully tailor capacity to both those school kids and also those travelling to work at that time. So I don't think TfL have got this quite right. I have got an outstanding written question asking what the criteria are that TfL use to add the additional buses, so hopefully I'll get that answer possibly quicker than I did on the one from Bonbeam Park. But what I've heard is that children have told me that they have to travel very early to ensure that they get school on time, just because these routes with schools on just get so packed, and commuters are telling me that sometimes it's taking them ages waiting for school, and they're sometimes having to get, for instance, private hire drivers to take them to work. So would you agree that it might be worth asking TfL to review the service they provide to deal with this overcrowding issue and potentially consider dedicated school buses on some routes?
Well, just to speed up a response from TfL, why don't I ask the Deputy Mayor for Transport to meet with the member to discuss the particular issues that she had raised with her by the young Londoner she spoke to.
Yes, I'd be very glad to do that, yes. And I think that while I've had specific issues raised with me, the more I talk about it, the more people say to me, oh yeah, that's a problem. I find it difficult to get the bus on particular times because there's lots and lots of kids. And obviously, we want those kids to get to school, but we also want people who are getting to work to get on time as well. So on a slightly different issue, in September, I was invited to address the London Youth Assembly, which was fantastic to spend some time with them. And I also met with the Sutton Young Commissioners, and both groups were incredibly keen to talk to me about buses, both on the issue of capacity, but also they raised with me that some young people are sometimes not feeling safe travelling on buses when they are travelling to and from school. What do you think TfL could do to ensure our young people feel more comfortable on buses? And again, could dedicated school buses be part of the solution?
Well, actually, I met one of the members of the Youth Assembly during the break, so I understand the interest that young Londoners have in this issue. I mean, most Londoners won't realise this, but the group of Londoners most likely to be the victim of crime are young Londoners. So it's hardly surprising that the people you spoke to are concerned, not unreasonably, about being the victim of crime. And so it's really important we do what we can to make sure young people not just are safe, but feel safe as well. So a number of things we can do, and is being done. So the Commissioner is determined to have additional safe and neighbourhood provision. It's really important that we encourage those SNTs to go on a bus to make sure young people feel safe, to deter others from trying to commit a criminal offence. The Safe and Neighbourhood teams and the town centre teams now patrol in and around schools at school starting and school closing times. You'll be aware of some of the big increase in personal robberies because of young people having their phones stolen from them. It's really important that they feel safe and are safe. I'll ask my Deputy for Police and Crime to look into whether schools officers have a role to play in relation to journeys to and from school as well. I mentioned in answer to a question from a Assembly member that there are 77,000 CCTV cameras across the TfL estate. Many of them, all of the buses have a CCTV camera. So if an offence does occur on a bus, offenders tend to be caught and action taken. And that's why these crimes tend to not occur on the bus, but on the way to a bus stop and on the way from a bus to school and stuff. That's why the S&Ts are so important, but it's really important that we do more, clearly.
Thanks very much for that answer. I would just say that it's not necessarily when something tips over into a crime, but also just young people feeling safe and not feeling like they're going to be bullied in situations like that. So, but hopefully we can work on this. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, and thank you to the member for the shout-out for the London Youth Assembly, who are a very engaged organisation, and I do hope that during our committee work that we have, we always think about inviting along a member of the London Youth Assembly to give evidence. It's amazing.
I thought Remembrance Day event was made richer by the contribution of the young, and you mentioned this in your speech, which I think is very important.
Absolutely was, absolutely was. So let's all redouble our efforts to talk to young people through the London Youth Assembly. The next question concerns bleed kits in stations, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Prince.
Thank you for your question, as ever. The actions of bystanders to stop bleeding can be critical in saving lives. The NHS recommends that applying pressure on the wound and calling 999 is a simple advice everyone in London should follow. All TfL stations and staffed bus stations on the TfL network are now equipped with first aid kits. Bleed kits are designed to allow health professionals or members of the public to stem serious bleeding, including items like bandages, gauze and tourniquets. In autumn 2023, TfL worked with the London Violence Reduction Unit and emergency services to establish a policy position on bleed kits on the TfL network. As part of this work, in August 2024, a group of trauma experts, NHS London, London Ambulance Service, NHS England's London Violence Reduction Programme, and the Good Sam's response platform agreed a London-wide position on bystander bleed control. This position and recommendations have informed TfL's position on bleed kits. The NHS strongly advocates for all people living and working in London to undertake basic training and become more confident in providing first aid, including bleed control. Specialist bleed kits are not essential for bleed control. The NHS position statement published on the London Ambulance Services website states that the contents of standard first aid kits are sufficient for the majority of bleeding wounds, and where there is no first aid kit provision, improvisation with simple everyday materials can save lives. The NHS highlights that the effective use of bleed kits requires appropriate training, and there's a risk of significant harm if tourniquets, which are usually included in bleed kits, are not used correctly. Based on this expert advice, TfL is not currently planning to roll out or promote bleed kits across its network. TfL always seeks to work with partners and follow advice from experts, including in matters relating to health and emergency response. For example, TfL worked with the British Heart Foundation and the London Ambulance Service on the issue of defibrillator access, and as a result of this engagement, I'm very proud that defibrillators have been installed for the first time ever across all London Underground and Overground stations, all dial-a-ride vehicles, all TfL and peers, and some main bus stations. This means that as of October 2023, every single borough has a TfL defibrillator that any Londoner or commuter can access to help someone in cardiac arrest. TfL's positions on bleed kits will similarly be kept under review should there be any changes to the NHS London-wide position.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Mayor. It is a very simple request. It's a bit disappointing, the answer you've given, and I understand that that's TfL's position. An organisation I work with, we've actually managed to raise the money and place bleed kits in, or will be placing bleed kits in all the schools in Havering and Redbridge. And some of those have been used and lives have been saved as a result of those being used. It looks like I'll have to take it up with NHS because I think they're wrong, frankly.
Well, Chelsea, I know taking advice from experts is now a fashion for some people, but when I've got a toothache, I go to a dentist. When my car's broken, I go to a mechanic, and when it comes to bleed kits, I rely upon the NHS. Now, if the member, he doesn't like the advice, he's right to try and persuade the NHS to change their advice, because I don't blame TfL for following the NHS advice, but I'm really keen to make sure TfL keeps it under review. If the NHS changes its advice, then TfL will clearly change its policy.
Thank you. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Bakari and concerns supporting London's high streets.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the question. I know just how important the local high street is to most Londoners. Whether it's accessing support, meeting friends or shopping at local independent businesses, London's high streets are at the heart of community life. The challenge, notwithstanding the cost of living crisis, is to make them vibrant, safe and welcoming throughout the day and evening for residents, visitors and workers alike. Every high street needs its own unique support. Through a number of my schemes, such as the Good Growth Fund, High Streets Fall Challenge and Civic Partnership Programme, I've promoted a strategic partnership-led investment approach to help Londoners and their high streets adapt to diverse challenges, like the changes in consumer habits and working patterns. In October, I announced the appointment of 10 of my design advocates as town architects to improve the quality of high streets and public spaces in 10 boroughs as part of a 2-year pilot scheme. This builds on my commitment to support the creation of safe, inclusive and sustainable neighbourhoods and unlock economic growth by ensuring boroughs can utilise the skills of planners and architects to help shape better places in their local areas. Town architects will work with selected boroughs to support design excellence where there's a significant development opportunity and the need to improve the quality of a place. They'll also support borough offices in developing and implementing a strategic vision for high streets and public spaces across the city.
Sorry to interrupt, I've only got 30 seconds left. Sorry, Mr Mayor. You've said that there'll be innovative approaches to accessibility in regards to pedestrianising Oxford Street. Will this include a buggy service similar to Sutton High Street? And what other ideas have you got to making the pedestrianisation of Oxford Street accessible?
Well, I think we're in danger of putting the buggy cart before the horse in relation to details of the scheme. The member will realise the importance of accessibility on not just Oxford Street but across London. She will have experience from not too far from her high streets in Sutton where they are pedestrianised and have a great buggy scheme which allows those who are disabled to go from one part to the other. A good example of disabled locals been worried in the past, but now having access to a buggy scheme. So it's a really good point, which I'll make sure is taken on board by the team, but we're a bit early stages to do that yet.
Thanks for the time.
I'm afraid the Lib Dem group is now out of time. The next question.
Can we just extend the meeting?
Oh yeah, let's do that. Can I get the? Will the Assembly agree to suspend Standing Order 2.9b in order to allow the remaining business on the agenda to be completed? Assembly Member Duval, please, on this question.
Thank you very much. This is one of your flagship policies, isn't it? So I think in terms of, I'd like to hear the remaining part of your answer, that you were in a full flow, and rightly Assemblymember Bakari said I haven't got the time. So do you want to continue with your answer, because I'd like to hear about what the plans are in the future over the coming years.
Yeah, for those watching, none of us are criticising the member.
No,
but she'd run out of time. That's why. Yeah. So she wasn't being rude, honestly, which is unusual for her, by the way.
Yeah.
So what I was going to add was thanks, Member Duval. We have a high street data service as well, and that gives those local authorities who subscribe to it really useful data on spend, on footfall, on unit vacancies. There are 18 boroughs who subscribe to that, 15 business improvement districts. And this helps them better understand their high streets. And we're planning to enhance that offer to involve the broadening of the data and analytics available. In September, I revamped my high street network, which is targeted at borough officers and seeks to facilitate better collaboration between boroughs and helps officers develop their skills. You'll appreciate some shoppers will go to one high street in one borough, then to the high street in another borough, and so shoppers don't think about one borough and another borough, so we're getting connection as well. And the really exciting thing for the future is the next London Plan. So members have got ideas feeding to the London Plan, which will think about what more we can do to reinvigorate our high streets. They're really important for our city.
And the challenge that you sort of alluded to in the beginning is to get a comprehensive plans for our high streets covering a whole host of issues. It's not just the shopping experience, but it's also the safety experience as well. Do you not think, in terms of that the joined-up plan issue is the hardest one to crack? That's really the jewel in the... That's what we're aiming for, to try and get these comprehensive programmes, whatever high streets exist, whether it's the Premier High Street or actually my local high street. In that sense, is that where you think we should be aiming for?
Well, if you think about when we were growing up, which is the high street was where the activity was, the buzz was. So you'd go to your post office and have a chat with people there, right? You go to a pub, you'd have a chat with people there. You'd go to your corner shop, and they'd know you in first name terms. That avoided people being isolated, being lonely, engendered in a sense of community. Now, if most people are shopping online, or are driving to out of town centre shopping mall, you know, then or banking online, right? It means there's fewer opportunities to create that sense of community. But also, it makes it attractive for criminals, because if shutters are closed, or if High Street is dark, it's attractive to a criminal. And so, actually, how we think about reinvigorating a High Street is really important for their viability, but also their survivability in, as well, but also making them safe places. So, the design of the public realm. Can we give support to independent traders? How do we make sure they're attractive? Is there a way of making this a way to bring people closer together? If there's an empty shop, rather than it being empty, why don't we use it for meanwhile use, for a community benefit and stuff? And so there's all these great ideas from Londoners across our city. I mean, you know, people talk about London being 400 villages. I'm afraid not all of those villages are flourishing and thriving, because the high streets are struggling, markets are struggling, and we've got to support them.
And just in terms of, just remind us now of where we are in terms of the nighttime economy. I know that you're stressing it's not about opening till 5 a.m. in the morning everywhere, but it's trying to get some extended hours in certain places in these high streets that seems them shut down at 7 o'clock, when actually people are working strange. Where do they go for a coffee? Where do they go for, you know, that place in the high street in terms of multiple choice? You've set up a working group that's reviewing it. They're going to come to a view. What's the timescale for that?
Well, let's just go back a step. I mean, because you're spot on about the new opportunities. Because, again, in yesteryear, those of us who lived in London and out of London would come into the centre for a good night out.
Yeah.
Most of us now have friends who have a hybrid working. They work at home, they go into the centre. They may work in a town centre near them. And so they don't really want to travel in for a good night out. And so we've got to think about how in London and out of London is more attractive in the evening and at night time. And in my view, councillors have got to change the relationship of the high street to before. So in the past, residents may complain about noise, but actually we've got to think about having vibrant high streets and so forth. And don't forget, today it'll get dark at 4:15. So although we talk about the nighttime economy from 6 p.m. till 6 a.m., it's night when it's dark, right? But there are opportunities there. To go for a coffee, to go for a drink, to go for a meal, to go and watch the next Ed Sheeran, to go and watch the next Adele or the next Stormzy at your local pub, at your community club. At your, it's really important to think about. I think they said the next Jim Davidson. I don't know. And so it's really important to think about these opportunities that the nighttime economy can provide.
Okay, and just to remind us, you have got this working group of experts.
So we'll be setting up. It's not yet set up yet. We'll be setting up a nighttime commission.
Yeah.
To look at all the evidence in relation to what's wanted, what's desired, what more we need to do, learn lessons from other communities that do it well, other cities that do it well, and to make recommendations.
Fine. Okay. And part of that recommendations will be about the future of the night style role. You're quite clear about that. Is that the nighttime? Yeah.
Well, what we're not doing is appointing a new night czar until we've seen the report from the Commission, because what we don't want to do is preempt the report from the Commission.
Yeah, it's a shame the other side, they say they're serious about these issues and they've got serious contributions to it, but actually they're laughing. I don't think it is. It's a serious issue. And I'd just continue with a serious issue. I hope they're not going to laugh at this one. So recently on the media is about the safety of women in pubs and who do they go to get it. And you must have seen those issues and been shocked by the response from the industry, where clearly high turnover of staff, you brief one set of staff, but new staff need to be constantly briefed about those security arrangements. What's your current thinking around that, relating that back to safety of women and young girls in our community?
Well, you'll remember that at the most recent police plenary.
Yes.
The Commissioner talked about the importance of having police officers look at issues around licensing And I was challenged, and I said, no, I agree with the Commissioner. Safety is really important, and what those officers recommend to a licence committee is really important. I was challenged for saying I agree with the Commissioner. It's really important we take the advice of the police in relation to these matters. The issue in relation to the Ask for Angela scheme that concerns me is, on the face of it, venues are saying they are sign up to the Ask for Angela scheme, and for those of us, particularly who are men, don't realise this is a really good scheme where if a woman is being harassed, she can go to any member of staff, and the code is Ask for Angela, says Angela there, and they should be trained to know there's an issue here, and we've got to make sure that woman is safe. And the BBC deserve huge credit for doing this undercover report, which showed that, I think roughly speaking, half of the venues they visited, the staff weren't trained. It could be because of turnover of staff not being trained. It could be for a variety of reasons. And we've spoken to the Safer Business Network, business movement districts, speaking to councils and the police to make sure we can have a situation where those who are venues who sign up to Ask for Angela are doing it properly. It's really important.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll now move on to the next question, which concerns hate crime in London, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Georgiou.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the question. As Mayor, my top priority is keeping Londoners safe. Terrorism and hate crime are real threats to Londoners, and I've continued to deliver record investment in work that strengthens our communities against extremism and stops the spread of hateful ideologies. The last 13 months have been extremely challenging. The dreadful terrorist attacks in Israel and ensuing humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, the West Bank and Lebanon have resulted in huge increases in incidents of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in our country, and this city was not immune to that. We've also had to contend with appalling criminal disorder in parts of our country in the aftermath of the tragic killings of 3 young girls in Southport. What should have been a time of national mourning was hijacked by hateful individuals, including those associated with the far right, who used the heartbreaking deaths of these children to promote racism and extremism, resulting in disgusting acts of criminality and hate. The additional £875,000 we announced last month is just the latest instalment of my Shared Endeavour Fund, which is delivering important and effective projects year on year. This is the 5th consecutive year of delivery, with our total investment now £3.95 million. The fund is delivering projects to tens of thousands of Londoners each year, empowering them to reject all forms of hate, including anti-Jewish and anti-Muslim sentiment. The fund's impact is independently evaluated each year using a bespoke monitoring tool, which has been commended by the EU and the UN. And this is just one part of a record investment, more than any previous mayor, of £15 million we've made in combating hatred, intolerance and extremism in all its forms since 2016, providing support to grassroots community groups, as well as supporting the Community Alliance to Combat Hate, CATS partnership, which supports victims of all forms of hate crime. Hate towards candidates and elected officials is a major concern. We've seen the most devastating consequences of this with the murders of Joe Cox and Sir David Amess. Whilst my Shared Endeavour Fund has been moving the dial by mitigating the risk of Londoners embracing hateful views or becoming radicalised, I've also been working with the Met Police Service and other partners to ensure everyone is safe. This is included through the London Contest Board, through which policing partners have been regularly updating MOPAC on the work they've been doing to keep elected officials safe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I welcome a lot of what you've said. Given what you've said and keeping women safe, as Assembly Member Deval has rightly said, Kemi Badenoch became leader of the Conservative Party last month. Your good friend Dawn Butler shared a Twitter post suggesting Kemi represented white supremacy in blackface and was a member of white supremacy's black collaborator class. What was your response to those comments?
Well, I'm not sure about those comments, but I saw Kemi last night and gave her a hug to congratulate her on becoming the leader of the Conservative Party. It's a source of pride to me that one of our mainstream parties has, as a leader, a woman, a Londoner, and somebody who's an ethnic minority. And one of the reasons I gave her a hug was not just because she was a member of this Assembly, but I'm incredibly proud that we have a democracy in our country.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I welcome your hug for Kemi, and that's a good welcome to politics, but it's a shame Dawn Butler didn't do the same thing.
I'm afraid the City Hall Conservatives are now out of time, and that means Assembly Member... I thought it was Assembly Member Desai, I'm sorry. Assembly Member Clark.
Really happy for Assembly Member Desai to speak, but just coming back to the original question about hate crime in London, I think one of the important things that you said that stuck with me since the 7th of October has been that really the very clear message, and I wonder if you wanted to take this opportunity to once again say again that when things are happening in other places in the world, it's often those in London, in our great city, that we feel the effects of that. And I think you do have a powerful message about how we treat each other in the city, and the expectation that actually, if you're saying and doing things to hurt other people, you shouldn't be doing it. And it's it really is our duty as Londoners to look after each other and protect each other. And I just wanted to know if you wanted to say anything more on that.
Well, I'm really grateful for the question, because there's been recent coverage in media from the new policy of the Shadow Home Secretary, which is to be against the recording of non-crime hate incidents. Now, non-crime hate incidents often are a precursor to criminal incidents, but they can be anti-Semitic. Just because something's not a crime doesn't make it wrong. And I'm really surprised that the Shadow Home Secretary has done this U-turn in relation to this really important progress step made, particularly in the context of the last 13 months. And the point I've made on a number of occasions is just because you're not breaking the criminal law doesn't mean it's the decent thing to do. And so, we've got to be respectful of the fact that we've got neighbours, friends and colleagues who are feeling scared. Heightened fear is a real thing. And so just because what you're saying is not anti-Semitic, just because what you're saying isn't Islamophobic in the criminal sense, doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And so, in a civilised, multicultural, multiracial city like London, we should be respectful of our friends, colleagues and neighbours. And I think it's a source of pride that we've got an assembly that recognises that. And I just wish that national politicians would recognise that as well.
34 seconds to make 2 quick points, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, in 2016, the PCC, Police and Crime Committee, did a report about intimidation in Tower Hamlets during the local government elections. Those findings are still relevant? It's not the law, it's the failure to implement the law that I think is the problem. Can you get your office at MOPAC to revisit the recommendations to see whether they're still relevant? And secondly, I think you did tell us that the Met we were going to do a report on the recent general elections and intimidation faced by candidates from all parties.
We're not going to know the answer to that, Assembly Member Desai. You're out of time.
You can write to me.
I'm so sorry. I'm sure the Mayor could write to you to answer that. As we're all out of time now, and at the end of the questions, Mr. Mayor, you are now free to go. Can I ask the Assembly to agree the motion which is set out on the agenda in my name, which is that the Assembly notes the answers to the questions asked. The next scheduled meeting of the London Assembly will be the plenary meeting, which will take place at 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 5th of December 2024, here in City Hall. I can't wait for that either, because I won't be here.
And all the problems that's caused.
And absolutely. And the next is any other business. There's no urgent business requiring consideration. Therefore, I'll end the meeting. Thank you for your attendance.
Well done.
The broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.